Okay, we'll come to order. Today is the Wednesday, November 18th, 2009, regular meeting of the Glendale Planning Commission. Could we have roll, please?
Commissioner Lee?
Here.
Commissioner Sheets?
Here.
Commissioner Torgerson?
Here.
Chairperson Kay?
Here. Report regarding posting of agenda, please.
The agenda for this meeting was posted on Wednesday, November 11th on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And if everyone would stand and please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, agenda item 5 is oral communications. I do not have any cards for that. We'll move on to agenda item 7. It's a consent item for use variance case number PVAR 2009-015 at 1408 and a half Valley View Road. This was an application to allow for a variance to allow legalization of a 136 square foot addition. We voted on it last regular meeting and had directed staff to approve findings and conditions. Would staff like to give us any overview?
Well, the attached memo, attached to the memo, there is findings and also a letter from homeowner association. However, it's not quite addressing the request of the board with regards to providing the bylaw, making amendments to their bylaws to stop any future addition to any residence existing.
Right. So to clarify, my memory was that we had said we wanted the HOA to agree that there would be no more additions. Okay. And the letter we've received basically says the HOA will not permit any homeowner to conduct construction without a permit. It's not quite the same thing.
Right.
I'm going to assume that that's just a misunderstanding and that they understood what our direction was, but maybe we weren't clear enough. Is that a fair statement on the part of everyone here? Okay. So, and I kind of interjected, was there more you wanted to add?
Not really, nothing
Okay.
at this time.
All right. Any questions for staff at this time? All right. I do have one speaker card on the item. It's Franco Noravian. Noravian, perhaps?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. My name is Franco Noravian. I'm the applicant and the architect on the project. Unfortunately, I submitted the letter, but afterwards I spoke to when I saw that he's not mentioning that the bylaws will be changed. I spoke to him a couple of times, and I explained to him exactly what you're asking for. However, he feels that to change the bylaws and specifically say that no one would be allowed to add any square footage to their home would devalue their properties. He said, what if the zone changes in the future and we are allowed to add, or the zoning changes and we are allowed to add? If we say something like this, no one can ever add anything to their home. So, but I think that if they're saying that they will change the bylaws to say that that no one will add to their property without getting the proper permit, indirectly, I think we can meet the intent of what that condition was, because if our hardship, last time one of the findings for the hardship was that you said the only reason you would consider approving this project is because the project was already constructed and it's finished and it's been there for 2 or 3 years, and therefore tearing it down would cause a hardship to the homeowner as well as to the rest of the association members. And so if the association follows its guidelines and all it insists that the members obtain permits before doing something, presumably somebody is coming here before they have done the construction, and therefore they won't be able to meet the hardship finding.
That's all very well, but one of our biggest concerns is precedent. And the way to avoid precedent was to have the HOA put in the language that we had directed. Now, now that it's now you're saying that deal's not able to be done.
I mean, I have talked to him a couple of times, and he didn't think that the rest of the members would go along with it.
They've gone back on what the understanding was at our previous meeting, in a nutshell.
Because they weren't here. And so when I informed them what's transpired, then that's what he was telling me. But again, I want to also maybe also mention that this, let's say, even if someone did add on without permits and appeared in front of you and was asking for a variance, the reason I don't think it would set a precedent is because it's not only this lot is unique because it's an R1, but it has 6 units on it, but our unit, house number 3, is also unique because there is a flag lot next to it, and there is no homes for 20 feet. So none of the other units, either they're facing Spencer or they're facing the other street, Valley View, or they're facing on the south, they're facing another development. So again, this is the only unit, and maybe only the one unit next to it, that can say that the addition has absolutely no impact on anyone. Any of the other units would not be able to make that finding. So I think I don't think that someone else can say that they have the exact case. This is a unique case, so therefore it won't be setting a precedence because it's unique because of the location of that unit where it is on the property. And
All right.
I mean,
Any
that's all I...
Any other questions from the commission for the speaker?
Not now. Not this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask if there's any closing comments from staff. I doubt that there's anything to add over the last few minutes.
That's true, that's right.
I would just add, Mr. Chair,
Mr.
that
Garcia?
because this was a use variance, just keep in mind that any other additions would also need another use variance. So
Well,
in terms of precedent setting, if anyone ever came with a future use variance, the city would be obliged to process that and have the commission hear it, regardless of what's in the conditions.
Yes, but if one of the conditions was for that HOA, and you
Yeah.
weren't with us, but one of the things we were concerned about is precedent.
I was here
And
at
we-
that meeting, so
I'm
I do
sorry.
remember. Yeah.
I'm sorry, stand
No, and
corrected. But in any event, in terms of precedent, my feeling is we wanted to preclude any other use variances because they could use it as a precedent. I think it's tough to say that particular unit on that property is unique.
I understand that, and I know where you're coming from. And, I think the only thing I would add is that even if this condition were in there and they did record such a document, legally, I think they'd be entitled to then come back to the city and say, we'd like the Planning Commission to hear the case again and consider removing this condition and consider approving a use variance. It would be probably very difficult to make the findings, but I think lawfully we couldn't say, no, you can't come back to the city and apply.
Well, I understand that we couldn't absent that condition.
Yeah. I think even if the condition were in there and they actually recorded the documents, I think they could come back and ask that the condition be revised and that they'd be entitled to apply for use variance.
All right.
So I just wanted to put that out there, that just because there's a document that has it, I think lawfully we couldn't say, no, you can't come back and never ask for it again.
Okay. One of the things that I noticed, my fellow commissioners, is we never put a date in terms of performance, which is something we have a tendency to always overlook. And depending on how we want to vote now on what was prepared, given the change in one of our conditions, at the very least I would suggest we add a condition that if this is indeed improved, that they have 90 days from the effective date of the approval to have everything put in place. That is, that we give them 90 days to produce what we expect, or they're back to the point of having to tear it out. So I'm just suggesting 90. You guys may want 60, you may want 120.
You're talking about
I'm
going
throwing it out
through
there.
the permit process to validate everything. Oh, the construction, is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
between the permitting process and also dealing with the condition on the HOA. So, again, we have findings. We should have a little discussion as it relates to the findings on the new information based on the letter from the HOA. I'd like to hear from my fellow commissioners. Mr. Sheets.
As I remember during our discussion, and the applicants were pretty emphatic on their response, one of the key things that we wanted to do was have the stipulation that that the homeowners association would include this in their bylaws, and there was a strong response that would be positive, and I didn't sense any negative feelings at that point. That troubles me because making the choice either way was difficult. We wanted to be considerate of the applicant, but we also wanted to be considerate of the issues that are involved with this property based on the size and the usage that is there, which is unusual. So it gives me a different look as to which way I would go. I would vote on this, and I'd like to hear the thoughts of the other commissioners.
Mr. Lee?
When I heard this case originally, I was actually leaning towards the other side of not approving this project because I thought there was more issue and problem of trying to validate the existing construction, which you have to tear down and expose, to get the inspection. So I thought it was more hardship on the owner to go through the process. But because of the condition that was put on there, stipulation that I changed my mind to support that. Now I'm leaning towards the other way if that doesn't happen.
Mr. Torgerson?
I agree. The homeowners association not going along with the condition that we wanted. The homeowners association has a valid point. If the zoning regulations are changed in the future, you don't want to preclude people from taking advantage of the new zoning. Yeah, I can see that argument. It'd be easy enough to modify condition number 2 to say that, barring any changes in zoning codes for that particular piece of property.
Specific to density, for
Specific to floor area ratio and density. If we modified that condition and added a condition 5 saying the applicant has 90 days to meet all 5 conditions, or all 4 conditions, 5th condition being in 90 days, I'd be inclined to vote affirmative for this motion.
Okay.
Looks like I made it anyway, so.
Well, I would say that we had a hearing, we had a discussion, and to me, the condition involving the homeowners association was a key one. And I echo what you're saying, Mr. Torgerson. I hear their concerns about, let's say, loss of rights if something changes. So I like your modification of the condition. I've actually been reflecting a little bit and just recognizing where we're at with holidays and stuff. I might even go 120 days just to allow them to work through that. But I feel very strongly, I don't believe that we would have passed this motion absent that condition and absent that understanding last at the I guess it was the October 21st hearing. So with that said, I'm going to suggest, Mr. Torgerson, that on the basis of what you had suggested, you modify the motion in front of us, and let's see if we have a second and can carry the vote with that.
I would defer to the city attorney to perhaps suggest some wording for that condition number 2 that would...
Chair, members of the commission, what I was thinking was that the first sentence would read, the homeowners association shall amend their bylaws to state that no additions to any of the on-site residents shall be permitted in a manner inconsistent with the zoning code then in effect.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
All right.
Well, it's up to you.
Perfect, yeah, no, that's perfect.
And then I was just talking with Mr. Foy on the third conditions. Was the 120 days was with respect to the permit, or?
We're going to say condition number 5 was they had 120 days to comply with conditions 1 through 4.
Okay, the only issue is that they obtain the permit. That's partly in the city's discretion. I mean, if they apply, then we have to actually approve the building permit. So it's just maybe that they apply within the time limit.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah.
Right. As long as they're actively moving forward.
Okay.
Michael, could you restate your changes to that for me, please? The way you worded it.
The last comment I made?
Yeah, well, the number 2, what were your suggested changes to number 2?
Just to number 2 was just to change the first sentence to read, the homeowner association shall amend their bylaws to state that no additions to any of the on-site residents shall be permitted in a manner inconsistent with the zoning code then in effect. Actually, it should say the municipal code then in effect. That way it applies to the building code as well.
Thanks for the wordsmithing on that.
So then I would suggest, pardon me, condition number 5 would be applicants shall have 120 days to comply with conditions 1 and 2 and to apply for the building permit required by condition number 3.
All right, we have a motion
Second.
and support. Call roll, please.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
To enter.
Let's back up and take care of that bit of work.
I move that we accept the minutes of November 4th, 2009.
Have a motion looking for support. Motion support, call roll on the minutes.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheets,
Aye.
Commissioner Torgerson,
Aye.
Chairperson Kane.
Aye, and a vote of 4-0. The minutes of November 4th, 2009 have been approved. All right, we're moving on to agenda item 7. Well, I'm not really sure if it's agenda item 7, but it is, in any event, a use variance case, PVAR 2008-019, and a parking use permit case, PPUP 2009-1. This was continued from the regular meeting of October 7, 2009. It's at 601 South Brand Boulevard. The applicant is Edmund Tarvadian, and I apologize for the pronunciation if I've mispronounced it. It's a use variance for 3,830 square feet of physical instruction school located in the South Brand specific area where said use is not permitted. In addition, applicants also requesting a parking use permit to provide the required 38 parking spaces off-site as required parking for the physical instruction school. The recommendation from staff is to deny the use variance case and the parking use permit case. Could we have staff overview, please?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Mission. As you mentioned, we have two cases combined together, a use variance case, PVAR 2008-019, and a parking use permit, PPUP 2009-001, located at 601 South Brand Boulevard. The proposal, applicants requesting a use variance for a 3,830 square foot physical instruction school located in the South Brand Boulevard specific plan area where the said use is not permitted. In addition, applicant is also requesting a parking use permit to provide the required parking, the 38 required spaces off-site as required for this specific use. Currently, the 3,800 square foot tenant space has been illegally occupied for the past few years as an indoor physical instruction school. And abutting that space, there is another approximately 2,800 square foot commercial space which was issued a zoning use certificate in November of 2006 to operate as a daycare. There's also a parking lot behind facing Chestnut Street that is being proposed to be used for the parking, to provide the 38 spaces for this use. The reason why I mentioned the daycare, we will get into that, and I'll try to clarify because there's a little bit of history involved with this project, this case actually, so they're sort of tied together. There are some operational and building code issues related to this property. The partition wall that's dividing up the daycare center and the indoor physical instruction school has not been constructed with permits. So that started the entire sort of process for us to go through this and try to, which actually did result in 3 neighborhood service cases, one of which was dismissed or dropped. Let's see. Well, the daycare center also has been operating as an indoor commercial children's playground, as called Into the Jungle. So this is another case that was against the owner of this business, which was dropped. So the 2 cases that are currently pending with the attorney's office are one against the owner of the physical instruction school for operating without a zoning use certificate, which is not allowed use, and the second case is against the owner of the building. That's for the wall that was constructed without a permit. And this wall thing came up when we were evaluating the project, the application. They needed to get 2 different addresses for this site because of 2 different businesses, and that's when we were told by the building department that they don't have a permit for that wall actually. So that's where it all sort of started from. A cease and desist letter was sent to the owner of the physical instruction school called Fight Club back in April of 2009, and a criminal case was opened against them in May of 2009. So that's still pending. The staff's analysis basically concludes that this case should be denied based on the findings, the 4 findings. 3 of those at least cannot be made, and I will quickly go over those just to see why. The practical difficulties associated with this case, staff believes that it is self-imposed and that this finding cannot be made based on the fact that there are other locations in the area which supports this type of business and are within the vicinity, and it's an allowed use actually. Staff believes that this property is not unique either, and the applicant's claim was that because it's so close to the residential uses in the area and it provides the type of use for the immediate community, it makes it unique. But staff believes with the research, and there are other lots that are within that vicinity, within maybe 2 or 3 blocks at most, that do allow the use and are close to the residential zones as well. So let me quickly go over the last one. Applicant also claimed in the application when it was first submitted, before the whole wall thing came up, that it is in keeping with the objectives of the regulations and that it meets the building codes. Well, it doesn't meet the building code because the wall itself doesn't even have a permit yet. And also, it doesn't meet the intent of the South Brand plan because this specific zone, CACS zone, was created, and it's one of the most restrictive ones to be more auto-oriented businesses than other commercial businesses. And based on those, staff recommends denial, and for the parking use permit, even though it meets all the 10 findings, these are use-specific, and if the use variance cannot be, if it's not approved, there's no need to approve the parking use permit, so that would be recommended to be denied. But if the commission feels inclined that it should be approved, then the parking use permit should be approved with it as well. That wraps up my presentation. If you have any questions, I tried to give it a quick, brief background history, but I'm sure there might be questions. I'm here to answer.
Initial questions from the commissioners for staff? I have one. What was the use of the building before they moved in? Is staff aware?
That was in my, if I'm not making a mistake, if I recall it correctly, it was an auto-oriented sales business, but I may be wrong.
We'll also ask the speaker if they have better information than that.
Correct.
Okay.
I may have some files on that as well.
Mr. Sheets?
Relative to the addressing of the building, that still is one building with one address, correct?
At this point, yes.
That's not
At
two
this point,
sites.
yes. At this point, it's one building, one address.
So we're talking about whatever happens there or doesn't happen, it's relative to that site, that building.
Correct.
Because there was some mention about use of the other part of the building. In this situation, the way things stand, can only be one use in one building.
Correct.
One address. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
No other questions for staff? All right. We'll continue then with the applicant's case. A little bit of, I have a paperwork question here. Mr. Tarbardian, are you going to be speaking, sir? Because I don't have a card from you if you are. You're going to let people speak for you? Or that's fine. I just realized I didn't have a card for you. All right. Who's going to be representing you in this process? All right.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Habert Minas Masi, and I'll be representing Edmond Tarbardian, the owner of the property and the business. First off, I'd like to correct Mr. Nazarian. The previous use was a printing shop at the address. I'll start with the use variance, and the reason why it would cause hardship for the business for the variance to not be granted is one, this place is used to help students that come out of high school or middle school, and they come to train and to get physical training and to learn self-defense. Now, moving it would result in a pause in operations, and that usually results in students quitting or doing something else in the time period that it will take for the operations to be moved elsewhere. Another thing is the location is very accessible for most of the students, where it's right on the corner of Brandon Chestnut, and it's close to the residence, even though it was stated that that argument has been made before. The reason why this place's current location is so special is because of the newly constructed youth center right down the street from Chestnut, and also the church that's right down the street from Chestnut. It's just a walking distance. There's also a gym on Brand, just a block down. It's on Lomita and Brand, and that's another place where the students or the parents of the students, when dropping off the kids, they could just go by and spend time there until they pick up the kids. This helps this organization, the business helps the kids from our community stay away and stay out of trouble. It helps them come and get training, physical training, learn self-defense, and then go home at night when their parents are out of work. The place doesn't harm the public, and granting the variance would not harm anything nearby, because there has never been noise complaints. There hasn't been any complaints of parking, any complaints from residents regarding, like I said, any noise or any disturbances. So it doesn't harm the community for it to be there. And also, even though the ordinance does not say that a physical training facility is allowed, it doesn't change the use so much because it's still a commercial use. It doesn't become residential. It's still staying commercial. Even though it's auto zoning, it remains commercial, and it's benefiting the community because it's teaching kids how to defend themselves. That's basically what I have to say.
All right. Questions for the applicant? Mr. Lee?
Yeah. How long has this Fight Club been in operation?
Over a year?
1 year.
Yes.
And, when you say that by not granting this, that you will be putting this Fight Club students or people who are patronizing your facility will be out on the street, will not be able to get the similar type of activities. From what I'm hearing is that there are similar physical fitness centers nearby. So what makes your facility so unique, or do you have some sort of a proven measurement system in place that will prove that the existence or validity of what you're claiming?
The only physical area that exists nearby is the gym that has just been made. It's a Pilates gym for adults. It's not really for... and the reason why the Glendale Fighting Club is unique is because it engages in teaching the kids from ages 4 to 17. And it's really meant for kids, and the hours of operation are from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and it's not during a time where people are sleeping, and it's not during a time to bother anybody. It's just strictly there for after-school activity. And what I was saying is, if the use is not granted, the business would have to move, and during that time where it's moving, during the complications, there will be students that, because of no activity, they will quit, and they won't pursue their martial arts passions, and they will be doing other things rather than coming and getting a martial arts education.
So most of the people who are using your service is high school kids or junior high school kids?
Middle school kids, elementary students, high school students, yes.
Okay. And now I note that, and I apologize for my pronunciation, Tarverdian?
Yes.
Has now filled in a card. And just for purposes of clarification, sir, you're part of a 15-minute presentation that you would speak at the same time this gentleman is as well. You won't have like a separate speaking time unless it's with this or in rebuttal. Well, I'm just letting you know that you need to work your 15 minutes together as well as you can. Just procedurally, I don't want you to lose your opportunity to speak. Okay. And you may want to come forward as well. Were there other questions for this speaker? I would like to understand a couple things in terms of the building. You own the building or you lease the building?
No, sir, I don't own the building. I've been teaching in Glendale, California for over 10 years.
All right, now, and I'm sorry, I apologize for this. You're probably going to need to get closer to the microphone.
No, I don't own the building.
And for process.
My name is Edmund Tarverian.
Thank you.
I don't own the building, but I've been teaching in Glendale, California for over 10 years. My first location was at 620 South Glendale Avenue. That was a very small plaza that we only had 2 parking spaces, but the place was granted the certificate, and my martial arts instructor actually left that location for me so I could start teaching there. And then I have students that have been with me for 10 years. 2 of those kids are just right here sitting down. And at those times, it was so tough finding a location. Everybody knows now it's for lease all over the place. But 3 years ago, Glendale was packed, and we had nowhere to go. And the gym we were at was only 1,666 square foot. It was so small that the kids couldn't train in there, very low ceiling. So it was someplace that I was even getting exhausted being there from 4 to 9 o'clock till 10 o'clock teaching the students, because it's a hard job to do. If anybody has been in it and understands, you give so much to the kids, and it's tough staying in a small place. We had no windows, no nothing. It was right on the corner of Glendale and Maple. Inside, you can't see nothing, and it was tough for me to stay there and teach. So I saw this location. I mean, it was a perfect location. We have the windows, and we have world-class fighters in that gym. We've had VH1. We've had many movie shootings there, and we've had reality shows that they came to the city and they got permits from the city so they could shoot there. So I think it's a great location. I got a lot of kids. I mean, we could have a lot of kids here, but that's not the purpose. I think I'm doing a great job for the city, and I think it's the best location, I mean, we could have. Right in front of me is a soccer store. It's a retail place. In front of me is Allen at Sounds. It used to be, and that place has been for lease for 4 years. Nobody has been renting it, because if it's for the purpose of only auto zoning, that's why I guess it's not getting leased for. Just about a little bit down, it's Lomita and Maple. They have a Pilates gym there for adults. Pilates is for adults. My programs start from 4 to 5, 5 to 6. It's kids coming in. The parents drop off. We've never had parking problems. The Acura dealer is right next to me, and I have letters from the Acura dealer that even the owner, everybody knows, we've never had any parking issues. We don't have any parents sitting down there and watching. It's just like a school. Okay, you can't go with the kid to sit down and watch the class. We don't let that happen. Once in a while, when it's testing time, they do come in, and parking is more than enough for us. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Well, getting back to the question then, so the building owner puts up a for lease sign, or you see it's a vacant building, you contact him. And when you entered into an agreement, you didn't even happen to think, hey, I need to check with the city in terms of what are approved uses in a particular area?
No, I did. I just thought that it would have been okay with the zoning and everything. I could have done it, and that's why I'm here today, and I think...
And the building owner's not here with you, right?
No, sir. I couldn't make it.
You said you had some information or a letter from the Acura dealer?
Yeah, my wife could read it.
Okay. If you'd like to read it into the record, that's great, and then we'll keep the letter.
My name is Dale McCartney, and I'm writing this letter on behalf of the Glendale Fitness Center. I am an individual who works nearby and would like to express my observation of the business. I have come to be acquainted with the owners of GFC and some of the parents of the children who use the facility. I have noted that parents drop off their children and pick them up in orderly fashion. Everyone appears to be polite and pleased to have such a business to provide recreation for their children. This establishment has grown since they opened their doors and has gained the respect of the patrons as a place where children can safely come and participate in various fitness events. It provides a much-needed safe environment and creates a healthy interest in exercise. I feel GFC is reputable business and very necessary to the varied lifestyle on Brand Boulevard, Glendale, California. Thank you for accepting my comments, and I hope you too will value all that GFC has to offer this community.
All right, thank you. And for the record, your name, please.
Diana Avetisian. Can I add something?
Yes, you can.
We've had a lot of, I think Edmund said, TV shows come and film at our location because we do have professional equipment there, and I know all the businesses that come have to file for permits, so our school does provide a revenue for the city of Glendale because they apply for permits and stuff, and they have to pay for all that, so it comes back to our city. So in a way, we're there to help our community. And we work with a lot of the schools because our students, they need to get good grades. They need to have good attendance records at elementary, junior high, and high school for them to come and train with us. And if they do have problems, we work with them. So we can help them with grades and stuff. I know it seems weird because it's a fitness center, but we do have like a lot of volunteers who help our children. And also, We help underprivileged families who can't afford to come when their children are overweight and stuff. We have volunteers who work with them so they could become physically fit.
Question?
Oh, go ahead, please.
Hi, my name is Araz Araradian. I am a parent who has two children coming to the Glendale Fitness Center, a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. They've been going there for about 3 years now. What I've seen is the level of physical, improvement in them, and as well as their self-confidence has improved tremendously. Now, Mr. Lee, you asked the question about having some of these kids go to other schools or other training centers. Yeah, we could do that. However, I'm sure if any of you have had small children, repetition is the key. This is somewhere where they've gone, their sensei is there, they know the program, they feel comfortable, and it's hard enough getting them there to train or to work out and exercise after school as it is, but the familiarity factor of both the location and the teachers makes it that much easier for me to take my children over there. Yeah, I can go to any school, they can go to any school, they can continue, but then, if they're in the martial arts, they probably have to start from a lower belt, from the white belts again, because it's not from the same school, and things of that nature. And it's really hard enough as it is to try to motivate them to go, and it's just gotten to a point where they feel comfortable. It's just like going to any other school, right? You take a kid out of a junior high school, their first couple of semesters, or their first couple months, I should say, is going to be a difficult time. The transitional period for children isn't as easy as it is for us adults, so sometimes it's not easy for us either, but it has helped a lot. And I know that there's a lot of other kids, a lot of other parents that are in the same situation as myself, that, the convenience factor of it being on brand. I work at yellowpages.com, which is right up the street on 601 North Brand. And for me to pick them up, drop them off or pick them up, it's right down the street. And the other good thing is that because it is on a busy street, on a lighted street, some of the other gyms, I don't know if you're familiar, they're in kind of like industrial type warehouses where it's not that safe. I mean, it's not well lit. It's in back, not alleys, but it's closer to some of the more industrial parts of the city. And, getting in and out of there, whether it's, not for me so much, but maybe for my wife or my mother, who sometimes has to pick them up, it's a little bit more a daunting task than just being able to come up and park in the back of the gym, have the kids go out. And the nice thing is, the safety factor for them is, there's a gate in the back that opens up straight to the parking lot. So there's no activity that goes out on the street. I don't have to park on the street and run back and make sure the kids aren't running out on the street to get into the cars. Everything is done in the back. Sometimes I don't even have to get out of the car. The kids, stay lined up. They know exactly where they need to be when the parents are going to pick them up. We just pull up. The kids see us, run out to the cars, get in and out. It's really that simple. And the convenience factor is something that has made me go there for the last 3 years, or take my kids there for the last 3 years. And they absolutely, they love it. And again, it's a familiarity factor of being able to go somewhere where they know where everything is. A gym is just like a school, as I said, and they understand where they need to be. They understand what they have to do, and all the other things that go along with it. And just the fact that they are exercising and not sitting home playing video games or fighting with each other or doing something, it means a lot, because more often than not, when we do go home, it's shower and bedtime, and it's done. And, as a parent, I'm sure everybody can appreciate that fact, that they're exhausted enough, though, where they actually want their rest as opposed to, want to stay up and, be children. That's all. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Lee?
I was going to ask the question, why does this, is this place so unique when you have other vacancies they can go to? I think he has really answered all that.
I've been teaching there for the last 3 years, and I feel good about myself.
We really need to make sure you get close to the mic.
When I go home, I feel good about myself. I'm there. I'm not exhausted. It's a great location. It got windows that I could see people, even drive by. They take a look, come in. They appreciate the place, and it's great for the parents. And it's very safe. It's a perfect location. I mean, we haven't had any type of problem. They said San Fernando, streets like that, it's okay also, but most of the parents won't go to San Fernando dropping off their kids. There's the many other things that, they wouldn't even want their kids to be seen, that we have businesses on San Fernando. If you guys know what I mean by that, there's
how many students do you?
We have over 100 students, around 170 students.
And what type of self-defense is
it? We have mixed martial arts classes, karate classes, different programs for judo, boxing programs. We have boxers that are world class that have been signed with Golden Boy Promotions. Actually, we're fighting under their card. So I think we had world-class fighters come and train in our gym also.
And a lot of our parents, they drop off the children and they go to the Americana. They get like coffee, drop around, an hour and a half later they come and pick them up. So it's very convenient for them, as opposed to it being somewhere further away.
If I may add, the fact that it does have the plate glass windows in the front, oftentimes after I do drop off my kids and go try to get a cup of coffee, when I drive by, I could see that they're still there. It's not like a gym where it's four walls and nothing in there. You drop them off and you're sitting there going, are they really there? Or not so much for my kids, but maybe the high school age kids or the junior high school kids can, like we used to do when we used to tell our parents we used to go to the library, right? But there's no way to be out of that.
Statute of limitations.
Yeah, right. When I was a kid. How's that?
All right.
I had one question.
For who?
For Edmund Taverdian. You mentioned there was a soccer store?
Yeah, in front of us, it's a retail
What do you
soccer
mean,
store.
in front of you, across Brand?
Yeah, across the street.
Across the street,
Right across
on the other
street.
side of Brand.
Yeah.
So it's
And
a soccer sports
it's
equipment
Equipment,
store?
yeah. Yes, sir. And then right the street next to it is Lomita, and it was a dance studio, but now it's a Pilates center. Pilates is mostly for adults, and we don't have a lot of programs
Lomita
for the
and Brand?
adults.
Yes,
Yeah,
Lomita.
it's right on Lomita and Brand. Right on the corner. It's also, you could see it very, nice looking.
was down there, but
It
I
was
missed
just,
it.
yeah,
Yeah, I missed
just
it, too.
opened approximately 2 weeks ago, actually, because I believe the place was granted before it was a dance
Oh, so
studio,
it's
so
one
I don't know
block
what they did with the permits over there.
Are we aware of that property? Is that also in the auto zone?
I am not sure, sir. I will have to look into it. I
The
can find out.
dance studio was there for at least over 15 years, sir. Now they split it, the business. It's 2 units now. One of them is not rented, and one of them is the Pilates instruction. And Pilates is for mostly adults. It has nothing to do with what we're doing for the children.
It's on the same block that the Cadillac dealer was on.
Yeah, they're probably not supposed to be there either, but staff will check into that. Especially if they're splitting spaces again, since you know that that's a problem.
Because they told me that places, my location was at 620 South Glendale Avenue. It was so small, but the place was granted, I believe, and that's the reason. It with the permit, the zoning variance was different at 10 years ago than it is now. I do understand that.
Sure, please.
Quick question. So you go and you rent the space, you lease the space from a building owner, and there's a studio, a dance studio or something behind you, or they put a wall in. So what happens if this building owner goes to the city, tries to get a permit for that wall, it's not constructed properly, he's got to tear the wall down? I mean, that's going to completely disrupt your operation, and do you have some sort of an escape clause in your lease that's going to get you off the hook?
The wall separates us where, this is his, this is the gym, there's a hallway, and then it's the wall. So if that wall comes down, it
There is a
doesn't
wall.
really affect.
Okay, so it's not a dividing wall that's dividing
Yeah,
your
because
studio
there's like a
from...
hallway where the
Okay.
restrooms are. So it's that wall.
Showing the drawing.
I'd like to clarify that the wall, there is a wall. Right, from the front of the building, you can see the wall, and it separates it into 2 sections, the building.
Yeah.
It's not a hallway. So
But
I guess the
if
point is that wall,
comes down, it's like it won't interfere us because that's where like the restrooms
There's
are.
another additional wall.
well, if I remember correctly, you have a whole bunch of equipment and mirrors or at least reflective type material against that wall, so that wall...
Honestly, our gym, it's my gym is growing. If I have any type of problem like that, I really love the location, and I might, just put some martial arts equipment there if I could do that as a retail, just like the soccer store in front of us.
I guess that's
I won't.
the question. Expanding
I have,
that.
yeah,
I think
expanding.
there's no.
The wall's really irrelevant.
The
Yeah.
wall is.
So if I
variance or
come
the
to
parking
that,
variance.
point, I think I have
It's
to
not
just
like
think
a
about something
structural
else to
wall
do.
where if you tear it down, like the whole building will.
No.
It's like.
Actually, it'll add
Just
about
a demising.
it'll add about
Yeah,
3
it'll-
partition for the gym.
That's all it
Yeah,
is.
it'll add.
Okay.
Anything else for now? All right, you'll have a period to come up if there's any rebuttal required in just a couple of minutes. I have 2 more speaker cards from Kachik Dotyan.
Good job.
Well, maybe, we'll see. Would you identify yourself, please?
My name's Khachik Daftian. I've been going to
Myself.
GFC over 10 years, and it's right by my house, and it's a very, very great location. It takes me about a minute to get there, and it's just a great place. I go there after school. I come back around 8 or 9. I just go home and sleep. It's a great place, a great location for. It's a good location and a great place.
Could I ask you to hold down the conversation a little bit in the back? Thank you. All right. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it.
All right. Any questions for the speaker?
How old are you?
Me, 15.
15? Okay, thank you.
And your name, please?
My name is Hovannes Daftian. I've been going to GFC for about approximately over 10 years. I'm a black belt student, and the gym is just a great location because you can go from school, get dressed from at home, and just walk to the gym, which is like a block away. And it's just a great location because I love going to the gym, love training. Pretty much, that's it.
And you're a black belt in what?
Karate.
Karate. Good job.
What's a block away?
Home.
Well, actually,
home.
I live on Chester Street. My cousin lives there, so I go to my cousin's house and change and go there.
Where do you go to school?
I go to Toll Middle School.
Quite a distance.
I mean Hoover High School.
Hasn't been that
Transition.
long yet, right? All right.
Thank you.
Right at that.
Thank you.
Cusp there.
All right. No more speaker cards. Anything that staff wants to add on what we've heard?
I just would like to mention that the Into the Jungle business was, they announced their termination of operation. It was in the report. I didn't mention, I don't think I did. I would like to sort of put that in the record, that the daycare center had sent us a letter to terminate their operation because of the complication of the entire situation.
So that place vacant now?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And the building permit will eventually be required for the wall if they want to keep the wall from the owner, because there's an open case pending. That.
And as it stands, if they separate that building, it would have to be an auto-related use going into that part of the building, or is this is for the entire building itself, right? The entire address, right?
No, this is for 3,800 square feet of space only.
So it's only for part of the address.
Correct.
I wanted to clarify.
But
one address, but only part of the address?
This is the situation. If it gets approved by the commission, it would be probably a good idea to put a condition to legalize the wall before anything else. That would be as part of a condition. Well, to legalize that wall. And then, in order for us to legalize the wall, we as planning staff would be requiring the applicant or the owner to get two different zoning use certificates for each space, because they're going to need two different addresses for each space. Now, for that space where the daycare was, they would have to provide us an application that would show a use that's allowed. For this one, now, this would be a separate issue because we don't know what will happen with this today, but
let me ask upstream.
Am I making myself?
You are, but let me look upstream a little bit from you in terms of planning. Don't you see that being a little bit complicated if we're subdividing use on a single address?
Not going to work.
It's not a subdivision.
It's perfectly legitimate. They can get a separate address once the space is physically divided. Someone can take a space and apply for permits apply to subdivide it and put different uses, which may or may not require use variances, before they've actually pulled a building permit to physically divide the space. Sure. It's okay for them to plan for that ahead of time and ask for permits.
All right. It just struck me as a little bit complicated, almost spot zoning in a way. And in fact, I'm thinking staff actually has a little discussion going on among themselves along that. Mr. Ghani?
Yes, it's actually not too different from a strip mall or a mini mall.
Okay.
So we would apply the same procedure to this, but it's subject to approval by the Planning Commission. That's the difference.
Mr. Torgerson.
A question for the staff. This zone is commercial auto / commercial specialty. What in the world is fitness center? Specialty, like the
yeah.
soccer store across the street.
Yeah, I can't really speak to how the titles for the zones were generated back in the early 90s. But what I can do is tell you that the permitted primary uses in that zone have to do with the sale of automobiles, leasing of motor vehicles, the management and sales offices related thereto, as well as a number of other uses such as business support services, daycare centers, hardware stores, jewelry stores, personal services, which are things like beauty salons, repair and maintenance of consumer products, and restaurants and retail stores. So a soccer store could conceivably
Be a
permitted
CACS use. So could a daycare center.
Or beauty parlor.
Or massage parlor.
Yeah, this is in the South Brand specific plan, which is
Hold on. Mr.
highly
Regani?
refined document.
That's right. And if I may, Mr. Chair, the members of the Commission, I must just say that if you are sensing any kind of peculiarity in the way that the South Brand specific plan is written, I think staff concurs to the extent that it gets so precise, sometimes site-specific.
Okay. The applicant does have a period of rebuttal. I don't know that there's much to rebut. I don't think there's been anything new, but certainly you have the opportunity if there's something that you needed to re-clarify or that you take issue with in terms of anything staff has said, this would be your opportunity to do that before I close the public hearing. All right, are you coming up or not? You don't have to. It's up to you.
Once again, my name is Hebert Minas Masi, and it is correct, the special conditions that, I just want to clarify that it's not like a closed box where it's just AutoZone. There are many other uses that could be granted, and physical training is surely not so much off the chart. It is still commercial. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and enter into deliberations or observations. Gentlemen? Mr. Lee?
Go ahead. We'll just go down the road.
Yeah, I just heard from the staff, what the commercial specialty zone, entailed. And I've heard the testimony of the applicant of their services for the last 10 years in Glendale, and testimony of the people who are being benefited by the business. I think use variance was put in place to look at things like this, where when the business really benefits the community and is a contributing member in more ways than one, in that it contributes to the education of the kids, and also healthy state of the kids, as well as the local economy. I'm leaning towards approving the Fight Club in that existence, in that space, even though that it may not say specifically that is allowed in that zone.
Yeah, we haven't spent much time on it, but we also have a parking case to go with that. And in the course of our deliberations, I'm not sure if you had any observations on that part of it, Mr. Lee?
I'm sorry?
In terms of the parking use permit, that's kind of...
Right, so I guess then that's the part, I guess, if we kind of agree that, if that's the direction they want to go, then I guess we need to also.
Well, I was just seeking you're in favor of granting the parking use permit.
Yes, and I guess what I forgot to mention is that, I asked about the uniqueness of, why chose that location. And, again, we heard the testimony that, the safety factor, convenience factor, and all these things, came into factor of my thought process.
All right. Mr. Torgerson?
Okay, well, one of the reasons we have commissions like this is because if everything was just cut and dried, we could do it with computers and you wouldn't need us up here. To me, this is a very simple case of, it's a zone that allows for commercial specialty. When they cooked up the legislation in the 90s, they made a list of commercial specialties, many of which are very similar to a facility or a business like this. You could make the case there's not a lot of difference between daycare and martial arts, depending on how unruly the kids are in the daycare center. So I have this particular location is good if it was right in the middle between two car dealers, for instance, with no parking in the back, and you had kids hanging around in front with people doing test drives in their Hummers and what have you. I'd say, that's not an appropriate place for a business like this. But this is down the end of Brand. It's in a good location, and it has a good amount of parking behind. So I'd be without question in favor of granting this use variance. The parking situation, the analysis is that it met all of the conditions. It looks like there are plenty of parking places, and so I would recommend for the parking permit as well, parking use permit. As far as the permit, the only thing I'm concerned about is putting a condition on a business that the landlord go do something where the business can't really force the landlord to do anything. They got a lease and they agreed to it. So that bothers me a little bit, having a condition that the landlord legalize the wall, because I think the city's already working on the landlord legalizing the wall. And if the landlord doesn't legalize the wall and the wall gets torn down, it doesn't impact the conduct of this particular business or the use. So I think that's a little bit of a red herring, the wall, in my opinion. And that's all I've got to say.
All right. Mr. Sheets.
Hey, I have to admit that the commercial specialty aspect of this type of zoning kind of leaves me wondering what the real intent was. I have a little confusion about the whole issue because my feeling is the owner had some responsibility in this process.
The building owner or the applicant?
The building owner, I'm sorry. And I don't know that they misled the owner of the business, but they sure left you in a vulnerable position as far as what you can and can't do. Of course, maybe the owner didn't understand the zoning either. I don't know. But on top of that, there are also conditions that are suspect and done in an illegal fashion. So whichever way I go here, some of that needs to be straightened out, and needs, as far as I'm concerned, should be a condition as to how we go forward. Should we all approve this usage? I guess the one thing that concerns me about the business, you're a business owner, you need to realize that when you start a business, you need to understand what the requirements are and what the rules are. And because you are dangerously close to the fact that you may have to take a successful, very well-managed, and as from what I can see, a site and a business that is very professional, you put yourself in a position where you may have to change that. You may have to just shut down a door and go somewhere else because it's not allowed there. It's not approved. So I just think there's a lesson in here that you need to know and need to observe. Because to me, it's like putting the cart before the horse. You decide what business you want to do, you put it in, then you realize you weren't allowed to do that. Conflict for me is I know there was a lot of work done on the zone specific for the car area, and there was a lot of heated arguments and discussions as to what should or should not be allowed. So there's some real reason why we either need to clarify what we will or won't do down there, or just let uses change and make our own determination what CACS means. But I do know the appellant made a point that when he started his business, he couldn't find space, and in this day and age, we need businesses in town, especially good businesses that provide a good service. Also, relative to the parking aspect, for me, I have some concerns about the parking. If I look at what's happened relative to the building owner and the building, there's a pattern of illegal activity. If I look at the parking lot, which is another lot, it's not part of this building, it's not part of this lot, there are what seem to be illegal uses on that parking lot. And I have concerns as to what will be done relative to that. We can say it's okay and make a point that there will be enough parking spaces, which seem to be adequate, but I have a concern. There's one entrance. There's a fence within the fence that has Acuras or whatever the cars are. That needs to be permitted. It's not permitted. And I think you have a responsibility as a business owner to know that could jeopardize your situation. So those are things I've been thinking about during this whole discussion, and they've given me food for thought as to how I'm going to make my decision. So I am leaning towards approving with certain conditions relative to the permitting of the building and the permitting of the parking lot. And I'm not clear on there's a covenant or something that needs to occur with.
Two things can be done:
parking.
either a covenant or a basically lease agreement between the two properties. But even though it's owned by the same property owner.
Same owner.
Yes.
Okay.
There's two things that come in: either a covenant agreement or a
today
lease.
it's owned by the same owner.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
He has to do a covenant with himself.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Doesn't make any
If we get
sense.
that far, I'm sure
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Garcia
So,
will have a great suggestion.
Having said all of that, I'm not sure I confused myself or you more, but I'm leaning towards approving, but I'd like to have some clarity on what requirements we would have for us to move forward and kind of clean up the whole act, get this on a good footing, and move us forward in a productive way. So that's where I'm leaning right now.
All right.
Got a question for the city attorney.
Please.
What is the precedent for telling a business owner you can do X, Y, and Z as long as some completely separate person and entity, putting conditions on the business, the property owner as opposed to the business owner is what's concerning me. Is that
Right.
fair? Is that legal? Is that something if you did that in the business owner couldn't get the property owner to adhere to those conditions, is there any legal recourse the business owner would have against the city or the property owner? That's my...
I don't know if I could speak to the precedent. Maybe staff can. Any type of entitlement, a CUP, a variance, runs with the land, and as a result, any particular aspect of the use that is harmful can be regulated through conditions. And conditions, as long as the condition that's being imposed relates to the proposed use of the property that's being requested through the CUP or the variance, my view is that the city can lawfully impose it, even if it's something that technically the landlord has to actually do.
Okay, so it runs with the land. That means then if the landlord didn't want to do it,
he wouldn't get the benefit.
He wouldn't get the benefit of having this tenant.
That's
and the
correct.
tenant could legally break his lease.
That's correct, and it's up to the commission, in essence, to determine whether they think it's something that's fair to impose on the tenant, and whether they think the tenant would actually be able to get the landlord to do it. But so that's something that's within your purview.
Now, in the case of the illegal wall, it was the one condition or one thing that Mr. Schutz was concerned about. In the case of the illegal wall, I understand there already is a action by the city to enforce the building code and to make that wall either legal or not.
That's correct, and so it really is within the discretion of the commission to either condition it or just to let the normal code enforcement process take it.
Would it not be a moot point if we conditioned it?
I'm sorry?
Would it not be a moot point if we conditioned it? Or is
It would.
just-
You mean, would it be moot from an enforcement perspective?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would. To the extent, again, that the
So if it's a
landlord would
condition,
fix
it's only
it.
to make us feel good. It's
I'm
not
sorry?
really to, if it's a condition, it's not going to be what is legally enforced. What is legally enforced is the current action within the city attorney's office and the building department to get the permits.
Our weighing in on the wall is irrelevant, I think,
That's
is
what I'm
what
trying to
Mr.
say.
Torgerson
It's a
said.
moot point.
Well, it's not relevant because, again, if you put it as a condition, then there's obviously incentive for the business owner to get the landlord to fix it, so that he can use the property that's authorized by the variance, and then therefore we wouldn't have to use the code enforcement process to effectuate that.
Got it. A little leverage. All right.
I had one more question about what is this illegal activity in the parking lot that Mr. Schutz was alluding to?
Regarding
As I read
the
it-
cars being parked.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Cars are being stored on the lot, which requires a permit. And per the package, there's no apparent issuance of a permit.
There isn't, but the parking use permit that they have applied for, if approved, they will have to restrap the entire parking lot, and it will have to be used for this particular use only. Can't be leased out for any storage of vehicles of any sort.
Right, and so my point is that there's no special separate condition that would need to be put on the approval of this.
As far as the illegal
Take
storage
care
of
of this
vehicles
illegal
goes,
storage.
State what you just said, that gets done. That
Correct.
It would need to be striped and
No,
identified
it will
for
have
that
to be.
use
They will have to restripe it according to the code. Additional landscaping will have to be provided, and it will look like a parking lot that meets today's code.
In other words,
Like
parking
this?
use permit, the parking use
Similar to
permit
that.
would,
Come again?
the parking use permit in of itself would take care of
Exactly.
any non-permitted use of the parking and force the property
Correct.
owner to restripe and to make the parking suitable
And
for
only
this
dedicated
business
for this
the way
particular-
it's
Correct.
stored.
The missing part in all this, in terms of, let's say, my remarks, is I wish the owner of the property had been here. Because there's no two ways of saying it. He's done a disservice. He should know very well, as a owner of a property, what his property is zoned for and what permitted uses are. So when he slid in and leased it to you, he was playing a game. And for him not to be here and stand up and hear from us that, we get it, it's bad. And the other part of this is we're about to do a parking use, again, for the owner of the property who's not here, who for all we know is he won't agree with this. We have nothing in writing from the owner that says, oh yes, I'll lease the parking or I'll give the parking to the Fight Club. This is all us saying, well, this is what will have to happen, but we don't have the owner weighing in to say it will. It's a little bit like what we just saw in the first case. So, I'm sorry, Mr. Hagani?
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to let you know that actually we're thinking along with you as you're going in this discussion, and should the commission be inclined to give an approval for the requests, we would definitely recommend adding a condition that all conditions would be subject to an acceptance affidavit signed by the owner, and we would probably ask if you would like to consider sending staff to write those conditions carefully for review in a follow-up meeting.
The other thing, and regardless of how we vote on this, but let's assume the use variance is granted. This is the square footage. You're going to be short 2,800, even at retail. You don't have enough parking. The other part of the building. Message to Mr. Building Owner. that when he tries to do a use variance or he tries to lease out that space, there's no parking available for it. If you, for example, took over the entire property, you'd need another 28 parking spaces. You've got 38 currently. The parking lot only has 45. You're doing the math, you're short a lot of parking spaces. If you're doing retail, and let's say you want to sell fight equipment in that 2,800 square feet, you still don't have enough parking spaces. So before you go from one frying pan into another, don't play with that space until you're sure what you're actually able to get. Because you could suddenly be in front of us in a year going, oh, well, now I've got this nice retail business going, but I don't have enough parking. And now you need us to forgive you on the parking. So don't go there. Okay, I'm just warning you right now, you're going to have a problem in terms of finding parking for that other 2,800 square feet.
If it was used as a physical instruction school.
As if it was used for anything. Retail, it's 2,800 square feet. Retail's 4 per thousand.
Yeah.
Right. There's 11 spaces they don't have. 11 plus the 38 is 49. They only have 45 spaces, so they're short.
They're short 4.
Anyway, that's all the math I'm going to do, at least for this part of the hearing. Here's what bothers me, is years ago, the city said, let's create an auto retail zone. Let's create a magnet where we have all the automobile dealers and they have a critical mass and it attracts people and people walk up and down and buy thousands of cars and the sun sets in the west and life goes on. But what's happened is, I'm guessing at the time, there were some existing businesses that were afraid of being non-conforming or whatever, and the planning people at the time slipped in all these other things that were allowed, like beauty parlors and so on. So I'm thinking maybe that's what happened as far as this commercial specialty. So either it's going to be an auto magnet center with related uses, or it's not. And I'm a little surprised that the Acura dealer to the north, I guess he is so happy with what's going on, because it creates an island. The block that the school is on is an island of non-automobile related stuff. And across the street, it's a similar thing. So now, instead of being a whole row of automobile dealers, we have an automobile dealer, and then we have a bunch of other stuff, and then we have an automobile dealer, and it's kind of destroying the entire purpose of that zone. So from that perspective, I'm really resistant to granting the use variance. Now, the other side of that, and the side that causes me to want to approve the use variance, is that entire block already is disjointed. I mean, we've got a psychic palm reader, we've got a bar across the street, we've got soccer sales. I mean, the block is already dysfunctional. And the question we have to ask is, do we say no to this use variance and say this will be automobile and try to reclaim the block, and it will take, frankly, decades to do that, because I don't see that bar going anywhere, and I can't foresee what the psychic is going to be doing over the next year or two. So I'm inclined, balancing it all out and recognizing that it's a viable business, that it's not hurting anyone, that it's already on a block that's dysfunctional. I'm inclined to grant the use variance, but I think we have a problem as it relates to planning and staff and enforcement in terms of what the heck's going on. Either we have a car dealership center or we don't. And right now, that block says we don't. We have a car dealership center, then we have an island of miscellaneous use, and then we have a few other scattered car dealers. So we've lost the focus that I think should have been intended some years ago. That's long-winded and it's verbose. Bottom line is, I'm inclined to grant it for the reasons I just stated. It's a dysfunctional block. This is a viable business that's doing a service. It's not hurting anyone. I'm in favor of the parking agreement, but it's got to be in writing from your owner, because I don't know who he is, and I don't trust him, because he's already played games and put you into a spot that you shouldn't be in. But now that you're there and now that it's working, okay. So again, that's where I'm at on it. So I'm in favor of it. I'm sensing that we generally are. We're going to have a little bit of work here in terms of the findings for the variances, and I'm wondering if anybody's had a chance to work those over a little bit yet. as we careen toward a motion.
When we're going to have them generate some of the conditions and covenant requirements and all that.
Well, we can, I'm sorry, yes, Laura?
Would you like to continue this item to have staff work up some
Well, I
findings
think,
based on what we've heard tonight and then return at a future hearing?
well, I
Think
think that would be swell, but we got to be a little bit careful. The new commissioners would have to watch the tapes of this proceeding,
That is correct.
or not vote, but
Correct.
thank you for pointing that out. Sure. I think we will probably want to continue it to let staff get the owner involved instead of state what we were clear for Laura and 4 weeks and so what we met. So let's just take a couple minutes and talk about each of the findings one at a time. If anybody wants to pipe in on a particular thing, staff can hear what we're saying, and then we'll continue it to a date certain, and with the idea that we will, at that time, most likely grant the variance. Sounds fair? Okay. Anybody want to take a run at number one?
I'll make a stab at it.
All right.
I personally feel some of these findings can be subjective, but if I look at, I know the statement here, a variety of commercial uses are allowed, but the main intent of CACS is to allow and attract out of commercial and commercial specialty, quote unquote, related uses and businesses. I don't know that this business is or is not a commercial specialty, but based on the fact that there has been a lot of discussion this evening in that area, and all the pluses and benefits that have been stated relative to this business, I think we can make that finding.
Okay. Laura, does that give you enough to?
Yeah.
All right. I think number two is easy.
So, no.
Number two is kind of the idea the whole block's dysfunctional as it relates to the overall plan. Number three, material detrimental to the public. I think we've covered that in our discussions well. It's an ongoing activity. The parking use is on the same side as the street, so kids won't have to cross the street to get to the parking. Benefit to the community and so on. And then objectives of the ordinance?
I feel that this one is a little cloudy relative to the illegal wall. There are some things that the owner's responsible for that I think if we have the conditions stated and addressed properly, we can make this finding work. But right now, there are no permits, there was no plan check, there are illegal uses taking place. And I think if we work some of the stipulations around sequencing of resolution of those items and timeframes as to when they will be resolved. And my perception is that we want those things to be done and sequenced to be done first. That all has to be done.
We want the owner stuff in place.
Yes,
right.
Because otherwise it's just going to open this thing up again, and the innocent party, the business, will be suffering. So the owner has a great responsibility here. So that's my point there. I don't know if that reaches all the parts we need to make those findings, but those are my thoughts.
I would also like to add, and part of this, of course, is us forcing staff to flip their entire rationale, because they've given us all these reasons why we should say no, and we're saying no, you should say yes. So one of the things they talk about is the specific plan, the intent is to promote auto-related businesses. As a simplistic statement, sure it is. And then the staff went on to say, the CACS, it's so restrictive, it's one of the toughest areas, that's why you should keep it all related. But that, unfortunately, is laughable when you look at what the CACS actually does permit. Beauty parlors and daycare, and it was like whoever was already there got their name on the list. Okay? So To me, the actual intent of the plan is to create a viable environment, a viable business environment that contributes to the sale of automobiles. And having a block that's occupied with up to 170 students and their parents who all have to have cars is probably a good way to stimulate sales. So work through that in terms of what the objectives of the ordinance are.
Put Acura posters in the gym.
All right. With Mr. Hagani.
If I may, go over some of the conditions that we think we heard that we would like to draft for you to consider. We would include a condition on the wall, a condition on the terms of the parking lease and or covenant of the parking, a condition that an acceptance affidavit signed by the owner would be required in some sequence, and that the parking for the rest of the building should be drafted in a condition associated with this use, which would also be subject to the same acceptance affidavit. Is there any significant piece of the conditions that we missed?
Just timing.
Timing, and then the sequencing of the actions. That's right.
Well, and let's back into the owner's responsibilities and whether, do we want to make that almost a precondition or a condition concurrent?
Yeah, we can make the requirement of the owner's acceptance affidavit to be the first thing that has to be taken care of.
Right. Because I don't want to see a repeat of our first case.
Right.
Where what we think is a deal is not a deal as far as the owner is concerned. So are you comfortable, Mr. Garcia and Mr. Hagani, that staff has enough information from us?
With one final question, in terms of the lease agreement for the parking, what does the commission have any particular length of time that you would feel most comfortable, or would you like to leave that to staff?
It's got to be concurrent with the lease of the space of the current tenant.
What is right? Talking about how soon it's...
Are you saying when, or are you saying term?
Well, at a minimum, you would like the lease agreement to be written for a particular period of time, whether it's a year or 2 years or 3 years at a minimum, and then renewable.
Exactly.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
If the use...
And then Mr. Lee.
The use variance goes with the land, his lease could expire and he could be out of there, and the use variance and the parking for that use should be tied together, and that goes with the land. It has nothing to do with the particular lease that a tenant has.
I agree.
Right, but in our experience, the only way that you could tie the two in perpetuity is through a covenant. The intention of introducing the lease agreement was that from time to time we see business transactions that people are not comfortable making a lifelong agreement, but they're comfortable making a long-term agreement that's renewable, subject, to the condition. Say, if you write a lease agreement for 3 years and the condition could include that 6 months prior to the termination of that agreement, they would be required to provide documentation that the agreement has been renewed for another extended period of time. Then we could work with that. That way, we won't be necessarily required to ask for a covenant.
He doesn't want the trouble.
Mr. Foy.
Yeah, if I may, in the chapter on parking use permits, we do have a provision that leases shall have a minimum termination period of not less than 90 days. So that already exists in the code, and I think it gives the commission grounds to increase that.
I need to ask the applicant a question, reopening the hearing very quickly. Closing the public hearing. Okay, so it has to be at least concurrent with the use variance, or the lease that relates to this use variance, however you word that properly. Mr. Lee, you had a question. Has it been?
No, the same question.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I just have a comment before we finish.
Jump in.
I think it's important that we highlight to Mr. Taverdian, I don't need to open the hearing, but I think it's critical that it's understood that there's going to be some responsibility of your business and you to put pressure on this owner. This is the linchpin. This is the cornerstone of whether this all comes together. And I'm saying that, I assume you understand that, but I want to highlight it and emphasize it, because that could make the whole house of cards fall. that's not done. And there are other things that can be done, but you really are going to need to be face-to-face with this owner and make them understand that you need to have this done so you can get your business in order and just move forward and do your job. So those are comments.
No, I'm sorry. Can't. You can, but we're going to pretend we don't hear you. So. All right. Staff, are you settled? Because I'm going to invite a motion to continue. How long do you want us to continue it for, given what we're asking the applicant to do with the owner?
We could put it on the next meeting. That would be December 2nd.
I don't think they'll be able to get that in place that quickly. Do you? I mean, do you understand what we're talking about? Because the owner, they're going to have some discussions with their owner.
We could get the motion and everything ready to go, but whether or not they can reach the owner, then I would defer that to the applicant to find out if they could do
You think that's fine? All right. Well, here's what happens. We're going to do it to a date certain without comes up and something's not ready, we'll talk about it that day. Okay? All right. So can we have a motion? You're saying December 2nd?
December 2nd.
All right. A motion, please, to continue.
Move this case to December 2nd without further notification. Certain December 2nd.
All right. For the purposes of staff to prepare
for the purpose of
motion and
staff
findings.
to prepare the conditions for the motion.
I second that.
I have a motion support. Call roll, please.
Commissioner Lee.
Aye.
Commissioner Sheets.
Aye.
Commissioner Torgerson.
Aye.
Chairperson Kane.
Aye, and a vote of 4-0, use variance case PVAR 2008-019. And I guess we need, since we did.
Well, yeah, you
Same
can change the
case,
whole
though.
matter, I think.
It's the same case.
Yeah.
One here. Later, we'll do a motion on it. Thank you. Let me restate that. On a vote of 4-0, the use variance case PVAR 2008-019 and the parking use permit case PPUP 2009-001 are continued to December 2nd, 2009 without further notice. Okay. Was there something you wanted to add?
We got a message from GTV6 that you're pressing your button there accidentally.
I am?
And your
Okay,
mic's going on and off.
okay. We actually all have been doing that
Yeah.
because we're off-centered to the mics. Well, all right. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Lee. Guess who's
The mic's working now.
Guess who's going first? Guess who's going first on the next 30 or 40 cases? Yeah, the mic's working at that one. All right. So that's continued, and we're going to move on to the next new business case. This is a use variance case PVAR 2009-033. It's at 517 and 517 and a half South Verdugo Road. It's Indra Restaurant Incorporated. And the property owner is Dan Kachaturian. And it's an application for a use variance to allow the sale, service, and on-site consumption of alcoholic beverages at an existing full-service restaurant located in a multifamily residential zone, which is the R30 moderate density residential zone, described as a portion of Julio Verdugo 97.20 acre allotment of Rancho San Rafael District Court Case 1621. The staff recommendation will be to deny the use variance case. Staff is asked to present the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Milka Toledo. I am the case planner for this case. As indicated, the applicant is requesting the approval of a use variance to allow the sale, service, and on-site consumption of alcoholic beverages at the existing full-service restaurant, which is located in the R3050 moderate density residential zone. As part of the site characteristics, briefly, there are several uses currently at this shopping center. That includes the subject full-service restaurant, a food store or a mini market, a laundry facility, beauty salon, dry cleaners, and another fast food restaurant. On-site parking is available with access from both Verdugo Road and Maple Street. Just briefly, I'd like to highlight two dates in the project history because this has a bearing on the case.
Allow me to interrupt for just a moment.
Sure.
The applicant, so your stuff can be on camera, you're going to want to set up behind us so that it can be seen. So I'm going to let you do that while staff continues with their part of it.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So, as I stated earlier, one of the dates I'd like to highlight would be January 8th, 1969. Variance case number 4771-U was granted with conditions to permit a shopping center located on a lot zoned both multifamily, residential, and commercial. And on July 13th, 1977, variance number case 6338-U was granted with conditions to modify variance case number 4771-U to clarify conditions, allow certain uses, and sign. Condition number 2 of the variance states, and this was again under variance, the original variance number 1 is what I will refer to it as, states that, quote, on sale of alcoholic beverages shall be prohibited. Subsequently, conditions of approval under the variance number 2, that was the one that modified the original variance, and this is variance number 6338-U, stated, quote, that conditions 1 through 17 of variance case 4771-U to remain in force and effect, except as modified below. Hence, condition number 2, the original variance was not changed and therefore is still in effect. Previous use and occupancy permits that were issued for this establishment were subject to the above referenced variance condition prohibiting the on-site consumption of alcoholic beverages. The zoning code does not allow the sale, service, and consumption of alcoholic beverages in a residential zone, let alone this use today would not be allowed, meaning commercial, this type of commercial establishment. One exceptional circumstance relative to this case is the fact that the use variance was approved to allow a commercial shopping center in this residential zone. The use has been operating over 30 years without the service of serving of alcoholic beverages. The proposed ancillary service would be more suitable in a commercial zoned area of the city. The Glendale Police Department did not have major concerns regarding the proposal. There's a low crime rate and a small number of on-sale alcoholic establishments in this area. However, granting the variance to allow on-site consumption of alcoholic beverages could potentially have a detrimental impact on the residential's surrounding uses. A commercial shopping center, again, is not a permitted use in this zone. Allowing on-site consumption of alcoholic beverages would not be in keeping with the objectives of the ordinance. Again, a full-service restaurant is not allowed in the R3050 zone. Granting of alcoholic beverages under the existing circumstances would intensify the use, which is contrary to the objectives of the general plan and the ordinance. While there is a use variance on file for the operation of the shopping center, the intent was to allow the use without on-site consumption of alcoholic beverages. One would assume that at the time the hearing officer determined that offering this type of ancillary service would not be beneficial for the site or for the neighborhood, for that matter. The opportunity to amend this condition 8 years later was not made by the hearing officer, leaving the condition for prohibition of alcoholic beverages in place. Neither case was appealed, leaving this condition as is. At the time the use variance was granted, a portion of the site was zoned both commercial and multifamily residential. The zoning conditions in this area are the same, except for a zone change that took place on the subject site. In 1986, the City of Glendale did have a general zoning change throughout, and the site at that time was rezoned from C3 to R4 to R1750 as part of the General Plan Consistency Program. So subsequently in 1990, the site was again rezoned to R3050. Currently, the entire site is zoned residential, and all commercial zoning in this area has been eliminated. So as we can see, there has been a pattern to move away from commercial, particularly on that corner, rather than expanding commercial uses in this area. This could have been expanded or changed, rather, in 1996, but again, the council did not approve that. They wanted to maintain, again, the residential zoning in place. Similar other uses or this type of change did occur in other areas of the city. So again, the intent at the time was to get rid of commercial and to maintain residential. And it's gone in a different direction throughout, but not in this particular area. So with that, it is recommended that the Planning Commission deny the variance request. If the Planning Commission is inclined to approve the variance request, an alternate draft motion is attached. And what I have also done is I've crafted some findings in case you are inclined to deny the request, because I did not include that in your packets, and I'd like to just distribute that at this time.
Findings if we're inclined to deny.
Deny,
Okay.
correct. And at that time, at this time, I've concluded my presentation. I am available for any questions.
All right. Any questions for staff at this time? None. Seeing none. All right. We'll move to the applicant. Again, procedurally, there appears I have got, it looks like 3 cards that are all basically the applicant, consultants, and so on. So as a group, Mr. Raybon, or Ms. Raybon, or Lee, I don't know. Ms. Madden and Ms. Bonavi, you're all in the 15-minute group. Use your time as you so choose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keene. My name is Lee Rabin. I'm a consultant with CLR Enterprises Incorporated. We represent the applicant here, which is Indra Restaurant Incorporated. The owner and founder of Indra 34 years ago, Mrs. Hong Thong, is here tonight. The lady in the light green, beautiful blouse there. Tonight happens to be her birthday. And her daughter is here also, Miss Vanavi, Christy Vanavi. I'm accompanied tonight by a consultant. Ellen Mackin's loss has been our gain. We now have Lauren McCadden associated with our firm, and she's here tonight to speak specifically to the variance findings. We tried to do a more than adequate job in our application, but apparently we come here tonight before you with a recommendation for denial. So Miss McCadden will spend the bulk of her time speaking specifically to those very specific variance findings that are required by the state law. The short background of the restaurant is it was built 34 years ago by Mrs. Hong Thong. It has 49 seats and it operates from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. Measures 1,578 square feet. It's become a fixture in the community, and it's grown and evolved along with the community. 34 years ago, Verdugo Road was a major highway arterial for the 2 freeway, and it was when the 134 was just opening up. Things have changed a lot. The demographics of the community have changed, but Indra has survived. I would like to pass out, it's the dinner hour, so I hope you don't get too hungry. I'm going to give you some menus of the restaurant and some exhibits. What we did, we kept a petition at the restaurant over the past 2 weeks and received 118 signatures in support of this application.
People that like to drink.
People that like to have a beer with their hot and spicy Thai food, like me. But more important than that, we've also canvassed the neighborhood. On this ownership map, which is on the wall there are 184 individual separate properties. We were able to receive 178 signatures of residents of those properties, representing 105 of the 184 properties. We're coming tonight with a list of 28 self-imposed conditions if you are prone to approve our application. These conditions restrict the seating of Indra Restaurant to 49 seats and to maintain the 1,578 square feet, not any larger than that. It would limit the sale of alcoholic beverages to beer and wine only and keep those hours and the operating hours from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. Our conditions restrict any live entertainment or patron dancing. It requires that the kitchen remain open and that food be served whenever the restaurant is open. And it has a number of other standard conditions which control a restaurant atmosphere and keep it as the family-oriented atmosphere that Indra has been and will continue to be, whether or not this application is approved. Lastly, for our opening remarks, I'd like you to know that the Hong Thong family also owns the Aoba Japanese restaurant at 239 North Grand Boulevard and has since September of 2006. That restaurant, if you visited it, does have a full cocktail license, and that was the reason that prompted their request for a full cocktail license here.
What was the name of that restaurant again, please?
Aoba, A-O-B-A. And I would like to give you these petitions. There's one from the signed by the patrons of the restaurant, and the other one signed by the residents, and these are the original copies.
You realize if you give them to us, we keep them.
I won't get them again. I understand.
I'll keep it on file, Mr. Chair, unless you'd like me to distribute it.
I think at least to just pass it back and forth so we can get an idea of the heft and the presence of it.
And if you don't have any initial questions for me, I'll pass to Ms. McCadden at this point, and I'll be back.
Sure. We can always call you back up. Very
Thank
good.
Good evening, Chairman Kane and members of the Commission. My name is Lauren McCormick Madden, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you this evening. I do understand that variance findings are difficult to make, and so I thank the staff for the time spent on them. And I'd like to request some consideration of factors that I'm not sure if they were adequately assessed or maybe just not known when these variance findings were drafted. So as Mr. Rabin discussed, and also Ms. Toledo, thank you, the restaurant has been open for 34 years. When the variance was opened, reopened, and no changes were requested to the on-site sale clause, the restaurant was operating very successfully. As everyone knows, the economy has really taken a toll on our dollars to go out and spend, and this establishment is no different. So at this time, the option of offering patrons wine and beer would really help with the business in this community, as just kind of a general circumstance to consider. With variance finding number 1, practical difficulties, there really haven't been any issues with this business in the community. It's not an approved use, I understand, with the rezoning of the property, but the business is established, and it's been vibrant. People come here, and many of them would like the opportunity to enjoy dinner with a glass of wine or a beer. The self-imposed conditions will really limit any intensity that this request would incur. There would be no additional patrons, no additional traffic trips, and it would really just be to obtain full to give the patrons a full service that currently is not allowed. In case number 6338-U, the shopping center was approved because its location was appropriate for light commercial uses, notably C3 uses. So in this case, this alcohol use would be approved in a C3 zone. I understand that with the rezoning, it's not approved now, but I think that's notable that it would have been approved at the time that this establishment was originally created and approved. So variance finding number 3 that addresses any public detriment to the community that this approval would entail. As Ms. Toledo has discussed, the police department does not have any problems with this request, and any on-site consumption of beverages would really just enhance the experience of the patrons. We're not talking about a bar or a club or anything like that, but really just giving the patrons a full service. The census tract is permitted 6 on-site licenses. There are currently only 2 in the tract, so there's no over-concentration of licenses. And in terms of variance finding number 4, promoting the objectives of the general plan, this zone is considered to be a buffer between more intense commercial uses and residential uses. And as the restaurant currently stands, it does buffer the uses. This intensification, this request would not intensify the existing buffered use. If this use was approved in a different area, additional trips would most likely be incurred. Some mitigations may be necessary, and I really believe that with the self-imposed conditions that the family has accepted, any potential issues would be mitigated by that.
Can you elaborate on that, please?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Self-imposed conditions and mitigation that you're talking about.
It's
Sure.
what they presented us.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's,
And I'm sorry, does staff have copies of this? Were there enough passed out?
yes.
I would encourage staff to look them over and weigh in at some point. Thank you.
Please. And as Mr. Rabin highlighted, the most important conditions on there would limit the seating to 49. The kitchen would stay open during all hours of business, and it would really just maintain the existing use, but provide the ability for patrons to have a glass of wine or a beer. I'm available to answer any questions or clarifications.
Did you have a question, Mr.? No. I can tell from the...
Yes.
All right, not at this time. More of your 15 minutes. Are you a customer, or you'll have your time in just a couple of minutes? Right now, this is just for the applicants group.
Never been one to let time go unused. How much time do we have left?
Well, if that's your attitude, you have no time. I would, unless there's something new and pressing, I'd suggest you have 2 or 3 minutes to wrap it up.
That should be more than adequate. I just wanted to impress the commission again tonight that this is not a use that is troublesome or worrisome. The police department has signed off on this application indicating that there are no major concerns with the sale of beer and wine. You can see from the photograph here and from the history, 34-year history, Indra Thai Cuisine Restaurant is a family-oriented location where families go and dine. We're asking for beer and wine service only. Personally, I had some Thai food last night from Indra and bit into a red pepper, and I wished I had a Singha beer at home. I only had Budweiser, did the job, but beer does go extremely well with hot and spicy food fare. Will be available on rebuttal if there are any concerns, and of course we're here to answer your questions. And thank you for your time.
All right, I have an initial question, and maybe it was in your conditions. Obviously, I wanted to hear what you folks were saying, so I only glanced at them. Do you have a proposed duration for us to limit this to? Are you looking at this for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? How long would you like to see the use variance granted? And we can establish a sunset on that, can't we?
I think we've done it before on CPs for alcohol.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we were okay doing that.
Yeah, and I believe you can. I'm not that intimately familiar with the Glendale Municipal Code, but these conditions actually came from the Ruin Pear, out of another client's file, Ruin Pear Thai Cuisine Restaurant that I'm working on right now on Hollywood Boulevard in Thai Town, just over the hill, so to speak. And it did have a condition, which is a standard condition with the City of L.A. for a 5-year sunset clause. That time varies depending on the complexity of the case or the controversy.
I just noticed you didn't happen to put that one in. Was there a reason for that? Were you hoping there wouldn't be a sunset, or?
Obviously, I was.
Okay.
Yes. But I think that depending on what else is heard here tonight or other concerns, someplace between a 3 and a 5-year sunset clause would be appropriate.
All right. Any other questions for the speaker or the applicant as a whole at this time? You'll have a rebuttal period in a few minutes.
Thank you.
All right, I do have some speaker cards. And, you know, it just doesn't get any easier for me in terms of pronunciation. Why don't I just suggest that you approach and tell us your name, and I'll see if it matches the name on this. That was the easy one. Okay. If you would please approach us. Napu Diband.
You already heard my name. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit nervous when I came in here. I just want to let you know that I have been a customer for many, many years, and our office always bring customers here. And I have a lot of friends from Burbank, Pasadena, El Monte, San Gabriel, and then they love this restaurant, and then they would like to have, you know, a glass of wine or beer or something like that. And I said, oh, they don't have, but they still come. To, you know, it helps our community too. That's, can I say just only that? And please consider to think about to give a permit so we can have more customers, so our community can like to circulate the money all over in the city of Glendale. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mali. I have a speaker card, first name Mali.
You're forgiven.
Hi, my name is...
You probably need to drop that down a little. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Molly. I'm the Intra customer for...
I'm sorry, what's the last name?
My last name is very long.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just trying to defend myself.
I don't think you want to try it. Do you want to know my last name?
Yes, I need to.
Luchai Kajon Pan.
Great. And now everyone understands why I left it at your first name. Thank you very much. Please continue.
Okay. I've been to the Intra restaurant for a long time, like over 20 years. And I think it wouldn't have any harm if the city will grant the beer wine license to the restaurant, because my reason is right now this economy is very tough. We would like to support the restaurant to make some more business and have the Glendale have more income for them customer to come, and they can stay longer. And also that area is really low crime. And I don't think anything that the owner will do, like selling the drink to the minor or stuff like that, because I know them for a long time either. So I would like the city to think about it. I know it's a very tough decision, but I hope that everybody will grant the beer wine for them. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last speaker card I have is Samuel Pashon.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Samuel Pashan, and I've been a customer of Indra a long time ago. And mostly of my co-workers, friends, they live here in Glendale. And we usually eat the Thai food restaurant at Indra. And sometimes most of our friends, of course, we're going to eat there. We need something to drink, just like a single or any beers, because we know our limits. We're not the drinkers and then going out and then the police is gonna caught us. So we're not doing that. So we requested them, why don't you sell like beers, just one or two, whatever you have it. So I think they know what their limits. So I'm support them, because this place, the Glendale, is a very nice place, and most all the Filipinos they live here, and we always gathered to the restaurant. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, that's the last speaker card I have. I'd like to ask staff to weigh in on anything they want to comment on as it relates to the applicant's presentation, perhaps the findings that they presented, that type of thing?
None from my end. However, if our assistant director or city attorney has anything, I'll pass it over to them.
Yes. Mr. Chair, I haven't seen their findings, but I do have a copy of the self-imposed conditions.
And that's what I meant to refer to, Mr. Foy.
Okay, sure. I guess I would comment that on condition number 6, I don't know what the occupant load is as established by the Fire and Building Safety Department, so I would rather not reference the number of seats. And it's also difficult to monitor. I just would likely, I prefer to just remove the reference to the number of seats altogether. I don't know if Ms. Lito has had a chance to verify the square footage of the restaurant.
1,578 square feet is noted on the site plan.
Similar to my objection about the number of seats, in number 13, I don't really know for certain that they have an area where smoking would be permitted under the city's ordinances. So I guess I'm happy they suggested this, but I would maybe change this to say the property owner shall be responsible for maintaining free of litter the area adjacent to the property, including any areas where smoking may be permitted. And that way we're not making a judgment that we think smoking is permitted.
I think I'd just drop it. I'd drop including.
Okay.
Free of litter, period.
Right.
And number 14, I would probably change Los Angeles Municipal Code to Glendale.
Probably a good one.
Number 15 sounds like something that might be used in a bar, and it seems, I don't know, I guess I'm just not familiar with these devices. They seem kind of high-tech and perhaps not really warranted for such a small restaurant. Electronic age verification devices.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps the applicant can explain what those are.
Shows the wrinkles. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, it's.
None of us have been asked for. And I'm sorry, sir. Let's just not go there. Thank you.
We'll ask that later officially.
Yeah.
And under condition number 27, I wouldn't want us to seem to be barring table service. Where we talked about sales of alcoholic beverages have to be from behind a counter.
Right.
That again sounds like really applicable to a bar.
Right. And what's your feelings about, if this was granted, what's your feelings about a time period?
I think it is typical that we impose kind of trial periods. Laura informs me that typically it's 3 years for the first go-round and then perhaps 5 years for the second.
All right. Related to conditions, and of course this can be a continuing discussion as we approach deliberations, if indeed we vote to approve the variance. Anything else from staff at this time as it relates to what they've heard?
I don't know if it would apply in this case, but being the fact that we've seen so many issues with banquet halls, should there be a suggested condition regarding private parties to be limited to no more than 30%?
Well, that's kind of by definition of restaurant already.
A couple of things that's in the code, and I think the space is so small it might not be necessary.
It'd be a small private party.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. But still a good suggestion. Thank you. I have a question for staff. From everything I read, there have been no complaints of any sort involving the property. Have there been anything involving the property they own that does serve beer and wine? Aoba? Any knowledge of that?
I did not look into that location at all. This is actually new news to me that they own another property in Glendale.
I'm going to ask in rebuttal if they might speak to that, because clearly if they already have a property serving beer and wine, it would be interesting to know what the track record is there. Mr. Sheets?
One question for staff. I know noticed in the pictures there's a, and in the package, there's a mini mart.
Yes, there's a Circle K, correct, at the corner.
Do they sell alcohol?
They do sell alcohol, and also it's a good point that you brought up. That's the corner that used to be zoned commercial. And from my understanding, and also speaking to some of our senior staff here in the department, that's one of the reasons why they had that clause, because the Circle K, or in this case the food store, has a different type of license because it's for off-site consumption and just sales, whereas a restaurant requires a different type of license and typically it's typically for the sale, service, and on-site consumption of alcoholic beverage. And the fast food restaurant, the Verdugo Pizza, I actually contacted them, and they advised me that they do not have a license to sell alcohol. So just the Circle K.
Any other questions for staff at this time? All right, the applicant has a rebuttal period. I would just emphasize I'd like to see that limited to true rebuttal and not new information.
Thank you, Commissioners and staff. In terms of the specific questions that you had on the conditions of approval, or the self-imposed conditions of approval, the 49 seats is in reference to the existing number of seats that are currently on site, so that's why the 49 was listed. If you'd prefer that it just says the appropriate or approved amount by the fire department, that's fine. For the litter area, I think we're fine taking out the smoking, if that's more appropriate. And the electronic age verifications are generally used more in bars and clubs, but what it is that there's a scanner that people can scan IDs through to tell if it's fake or not, and it actually is connected to the, I think, police department or some ABC database that's used. So that it's just kind of another safe method of making sure that only people over 21 are drinking. And in terms of the counter, serving behind the counter, the layout of the restaurant is such that all alcohol service would be done at the tables. So just to clarify that.
That really was a condition you wouldn't have really wanted anyway.
Most likely not. So thank you for finding that. In terms of the sunset clause, it would be most helpful if it was granted for 3 years, and then after 3 years, if we could come back for plan approval and then extend it for 5. That would be great. In private parties, if there needed to be a condition imposed about private parties, whether it's size or amount, then that's certainly okay as well.
Well, they just need to be aware of what the rules are for restaurants.
Sure.
It's already in place.
Right. Okay. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Rabin about the other restaurant, Aoba, and their history with that.
Very good.
I happen to have a fresh printout from the license query website of the Alcoholic Beverage Control regarding Aoba Japanese Restaurant at 239 North Brand. When I say fresh, I mean today. You can tell what I was doing in the office. And at the bottom, if it had any disciplinary record, it would be listed here. And under disciplinary action, it shows nothing pending and nothing found. So I'll give this to staff. Any other questions I might address?
Well, let's see. Anything from the commission at this time?
Nothing right now. Thank you.
No, I think that's it.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much. I'm going to close the public hearing and enter into deliberations. Mr. Lee, based on a previous comment, I think I'll let you go first.
Payback.
Take that. But only this time. We won't continue with that.
You know, this is a little bit difficult. I mean, you know, what it says black and white, you know, and I know what the neighborhood is like and what the direction that the city wants to go. And then you have this wonderful establishment that's been there over 30 years, of a really, that's been good service to the neighbor, and operated obviously very successful restaurant. And I myself am fan of Thai food and also a little sip of beer. So my head says, this should not be allowed. Yet my taste bud says to go. So right now, I'm
I'm not
just
sure where you're going to end up with.
Yeah, I know. So
rules.
Let me listen to other commissioners.
Sure. Yeah. Right. And that's why we call this a discussion deliberation. Mr. Sheets, it looked like you were prepared.
Not sure I'm ever prepared. I'd like to thank the group for the presentation. It's very thorough, very complete. Obviously, you're here in force. Things that come to mind for me are similar as to Commissioner Lee mentioned. And I'm always an advocate to try to follow these rules and try to match the intent that is there. And I've been in the city a long time, over 50 years, and I've seen many changes. And for that reason, and for the reason that a lot of those changes aren't for the good, I understand why these rules are put in place. But that's why we're here, to look at each individual issue, see what the concerns are, what the problems are. It strikes me very positive that all the people that are here in support from the family and the restaurant. It strikes me also that there are no residents here, no other businesses here, and this was posted, so that means something to me. The business has been here for 30 years. It seems to be doing well, at least from the pictures and what I've heard. It's well established. It's a clean area. It's a very positive business for the area. And I think it says something that there isn't a documented history of problems relative to the restaurant or the area, compounded by the fact that there aren't residents here complaining about the restaurant. No other departments have had comments or issues. And I guess for me, the one thing that sways me is the fact that there's alcohol sold within the same center. Now, I see it. I can see the difference between buying the alcohol and leaving and having the alcohol with a meal, but I'm not so sure which is more positive or more negative. The potential people can buy alcohol and walk out and drink it in the parking lot. So I'm inclined to support this request, but I'd like to hear all the input from the other commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Sheets. Mr. Torgerson.
Well, my input, Ms. Toledo did a very, very good job putting together the arguments and the findings and the recommendation to deny the variance request. One of the factors in the recommendation to deny was this variance case 4771U from 40 years ago, from 1969. And 40 years ago, in 1969, they decided that alcoholic beverages shall be prohibited, which is a little surprising 40 years ago, given the way I remember.
It was a groundbreaking
60s,
case. Yeah.
What you remember?
But in fact, in view of the fact that there's little or no neighborhood, there's no neighborhood objection to this. There's a petition signed by 184 176 people in the immediate area in support of this. Commissioner Sheets mentioned they sell beer at the store next door. And the self-imposed conditions are very thorough and very comprehensive. I would be inclined to support the granting of this variance. I should say to the applicant's representative that I'm sympathetic to what he had said. The worst Thai restaurant I ever went to was in Philadelphia. I ordered a Singha, and they said, "What's that?" And all I had was Budweiser. And the food was like they saw pictures of Thai food in the magazine, figured they could just cook it. So no, I agree that having a Singha with your Thai food is a lovely thing. And on the basis of that, I would support the application.
I'm a little surprised. I'm a little surprised. Frankly, that's not required. But in all seriousness, any time that we're faced with an intensification of use related to especially alcohol, it has a very high hurdle to overcome. And we, I think, all default to a no position and then decide whether or not there's a reasonable, controlled, appropriate use for it. I, just in a nutshell, am comfortable that the neighborhood doesn't see a problem with it, or if they don't even have an awareness of it, I don't think they will see a problem. I'm always assumed that even though they say we found 105 separate properties and they did a pretty good outreach, there's always people that just have no idea what's about to happen. But I personally am convinced that if we allow this 49-seat restaurant to allow beer and wine sales that are related to the meals they're serving, I don't think anyone outside that restaurant is really going to know what's going on inside the restaurant. I would be more concerned, frankly, about if that restaurant had been in place and a retail liquor store wanted to come in there. I don't think that we would probably allow that. I mean, that's not in front of us, but I think that hurdle would be very tough to overcome. But where we already have the off-site consumption store in place, and what we're looking at here is a restaurant that's been in place for a number of years, who has another facility that has beer and wine, and at least per the testimony of the applicant, has not had any complaints. I think this is a perfect situation and a perfect example to allow someone to be able to expand the efficacy of their business, with conditions and with the 3-year sunset clause to demonstrate that it's a boon to them economically, but it's not an impact to the community at large. The only thing I would mention besides the conditions that we had seen is I'm a little concerned about alcohol at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's a small thing. It's 7 days a week, 10 o'clock alcohol. I wouldn't want to make it noon because some people like to have a slightly early lunch, but I'm just not so sure about the 10 a.m., and I'd just like to hear from my fellow commissioners. But I think our general sentiment is that we're going to approve the use variance, and we should concentrate on conditions or any other concerns that we might have. So what's everyone's thoughts about the hours of operation? Mr. Sheets.
I think based on what my thoughts were and essential comments from the other commissioners, for the same reason, I'd be okay with the 10 o'clock because we're putting a lot of trust and faith in the customers that are attending there, and some may and some may not. Some may have an early lunch, so if we're going in that direction, I'm okay with it. I think, and I'll just amplify that, I appreciate the fact that the consultant and the owners went to the effort to not only make a very positive presentation, but to come up with these kinds of conditions and agreements in a proactive way. I think it's very adds to the positive approach that is being taken, and I think it's to be commended. So those are my thoughts on the timing.
I agree.
All right, I'm persuaded by what you said. Mr. Torgerson?
Succinctly, I agree.
All right.
Thank you.
Now, that said, we have a little bit of work ahead of us in terms of preparing findings that would grant the motion. And I hate to make this a habit about continuing for the purpose of making findings, but it certainly eases the length or the duration of our meetings. Mr. Hagani?
I think it's a good habit to allow staff to actually think about the findings so that our records are
Okay.
good.
All right, so we're going to start stacking things up again. And again, normally when we continue these for this purpose, it's far briefer than our first hearing today when surprises pop up. But so with that said, if we were going to continue it, is December 2nd still an appropriate date?
You can still put them on December 2nd, absolutely.
We
would put them on consent calendar, since you've already discussed it, so that's why.
Well, you saw what happened with the first consent.
That was our hope.
And we have plenty, we don't have an extremely heavy workload that day yet.
No, not right now.
All right. Well, then, would someone like to make a motion to continue it?
I move that we continue case number PVAR 2009-033 to a time certain, December 2nd, for the staff to develop the findings in support of this case.
Before we continue.
And without further notice.
Without further notice.
And before we seek a second, what were you going to say, Mr. Torgerson?
Do we want to discuss the conditions?
Was there something you wanted to add, or
Well, if we were going to be making a motion to approve this variance, and we had the language down pat, we would say we would add to that the following conditions, and when we went through the conditions, we would eliminate number 6, change number 13, as we discussed, to eliminate the outdoor sidewalk smoking area.
Number 14.
Change number 14 to say Glendale instead of Los Angeles. Eliminate number 27 and add the 3 years.
Okay. All right. And that was for staff to reference as they prepare their findings and their conditions.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to make a comment that I believe in one of the motions, it just mentioned the clause regarding the motion shall take effect and be enforced upon the 10th day after this passage. That is actually an error because that only applies to subdivisions, so it's actually a 15-day appeal period. So I just want to mention that for the record so that there is no confusion. Thank you.
Thank you for, again, dotting I's on that kind of stuff. And so we have a motion. There was a little bit of discussion. The motion's been made seeking support.
And I'll second the motion.
All right. So I have a motion. I have a motion and support. Would you call roll, please?
Commissioner Lee?
Aye.
Commissioner Sheets?
Aye.
Commissioner Torgerson?
Aye.
Chairperson Kane?
Aye. On a vote of 4-0, use variance case PVAR 2009-033 is continued to December 2nd for the purpose of making findings and conditions with no further notice. And I'll just make the same statement we did before. Let's make sure that any new commission members are told that if they want to participate, they need to be watching the tape of today's meeting.
Yes.
All right?
Available online.
Yes.
Perhaps.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll give you a moment here to take down your stuff. Go right ahead. We're going to take a 2-minute recess, plus or minus. Okay. Okay, we're back in session. It is a continuation of the Wednesday, November 18th, 2009 Glendale Planning Commission meeting. We're moving to agenda item use variance case PVAR 2009-036. It's a renewal at 1371 East Colorado Street. The applicant is Con Consulting. The property owner is Kermanig LLC. It's an application for use variance to allow the continued use of a neighborhood bakery shop to operate as both a retail and a wholesale bakery, as approved by variance case number 10598-U in the C1 neighborhood commercial and C3 commercial services zones described as Lot 4 and portions of Lots 1, 2, and 3, tract number 887. Staff is represented by Brad Collin, and it's a recommendation to approve the use variance. Mr. Collin, would you give us an overview?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. As mentioned, this is a use variance for a neighborhood bakery to continue to operate as both retail and a wholesale bakery. The subject property is located in both the C1 and C3 zones. A use permit is required because the applicant is requesting a wholesale use, which is not a permitted use in the two listed commercial zones. The subject property is relatively level, developed with a one-story commercial building at the front of the property and surface parking area at the rear. Vehicular access to the rear parking area is reached from East Orange Grove Avenue through a 20-foot wide driveway located in the R2250 zone and over adjacent C3 zone property to the west of the subject property. The building is occupied by the subject bakery business, as well as other retail businesses to the east and west of the subject space. The bakery has been in operation for approximately 15 years and 10 years as both retail and wholesale. The purpose of the variance process is to assure that a property shall not be deprived of development opportunities commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zone and neighborhood. The strict application of the provision of the ordinance result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance in that the C1 and C2 zones split the property limits and the types of uses that can be located at the site. The granting of this variance would not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance in that the ordinance intends to promote reasonable development or flexibility of use of properties to meet the changing needs and circumstances. The site, as mentioned, is zoned both C1 and C3. Use variance was previously approved by the Board of Zoning Adjustment on January 27, 1999. The use variance was required because wholesale is not a permitted use, as mentioned, in the C1 or C3 zones. As of the writing of this report, staff has not received any comments or concerns from the city's police department or neighborhood services section. Staff is recommending approval with conditions of the subject application, and the subject project is exempt or categorically exempt from the environmental review process. If you would like, I can run through some of the conditions of approval, and I'd also like to mention that staff has received 6 letters, which I provided before each of you, in opposition to the proposed application. Some of the concerns that are brought up in the listed letters have concerns dealing with parking along the driveway accessed off of Orange Grove, as well as noise issues and business operations. If the Commission would like, I'll be glad to run through the conditions of approval that staff is recommending.
Please.
I'll just highlight some of the conditions for the Commission. Attached that the premises, including the 5-foot passageway, which is located just to the west of the subject business, be maintained in a clean and orderly condition, free of weeds, trash, and graffiti. Currently, that area is fenced off, and staff would recommend an amendment to have that area to continue to be fenced off so that area isn't used or made easily used for loitering or anyone hanging out and providing trash in that area. if the commission so decides. Condition number 8, that any expansion or modification of the facility or use shall require a new variance application. In this case, expansion shall constitute adding a floor area, increase of delivery trucks from 2, increase in baking ovens from 2, an increase in the number of employees from 5, with the exception of immediate family members, not to exceed a total of 10, as determined by the zoning administrator. And condition number 10, any vehicles used for loading or unloading purposes shall do so solely on the subject property without blocking any common driveways or parking spaces. And also, staff would like to add one more suggested condition, that hours of operation be put in place on the business in order to make it more compatible with the surrounding area. Again, a suggestion for the commission. That concludes staff presentation, and I am available for any questions.
Questions for staff at this time? I have one. There is a document that was issued in 2004 to Mr. Khan, a variance case 10598U renewal, and in that it said it was good until January 31st, 2014. So I'm like, why are we here? Now.
Practice. Where does it say 2014?
On the bottom.
Oh, yeah, they're number 11.
Condition number 11.
10-year.
We'll be happy to go.
I'm going to give staff a couple of moments here to let me just ask out of sequence for a moment. Mr. Khan, do you have any idea about that?
Yes, I do.
All right. While staff's looking at it, could you explain why this is 2014? And
why are you here?
And to the best of my knowledge, it's currently 2009.
I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Rodney Khan. I'm a consultant on this project. My offices are located at 1111 North Brand Boulevard, Suite 403 here in the city of Glendale. The original approval did state that, and then it was appealed to the Board of Zoning Adjustments. When it was appealed at the Board of Zoning Adjustments, during the deliberation, what they concluded was they sustained the approval, but they only granted the term for 5 years. Thus, that's why we're here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Then I suggest, first off, staff, will you complete in your initial comments?
Yes, thank you.
Then please begin your portion of the proceedings. You have 15 minutes for your team, Mr.
Thank you very much. Once again, good evening, Chairman, Commissioners, City staff. My name again is Rodney Khan. Our use variance request is pretty straightforward. As has been mentioned, 10 years ago, we had this same exact application approved. The square footage is the same, the use is the same, the hours of operation are the same, the business is the same. Number of employees are the same. 5 years ago, we came back for a renewal. And once again, this same exact application was approved. And here we are here today. As I mentioned, why? Because of the term as it relates to the Board of Zoning Adjustments. The Kermanic Bakery is owned and operated by the Kabadayan family, and they've been operating this for the past 20 years. They own the business, and they also own the building. So we'll be able to have a discussion with the tenant and the owner here this evening. Mr. Sheets, you mentioned earlier in another project, you said that good businesses that provide a good service is what we want here in the city of Glendale. And that's exactly what the Kermanic Bakery is. It's a very good business. Over the years, the bakery has upgraded the facade of the building through the city's facade improvement program. And they've also been very instrumental in terms of trying to change that area. When they moved in some 20 years ago, it was a very different area, very different businesses, and they've had it go in a very positive way. A few points of clarification I want to make. The staff report, and I thought Mr. Collin did a very good job, talks about a 5,179 square foot bakery/retail. The bakery portion is not 5,179 square feet. It's actually 3,140. And then you have a retail establishment of about 1,000 square feet to the east and same to the west. That building itself is 5,179 square feet.
Let me interject.
Sure.
I apologize, but at some point then, I thought one of the conditions was 10% of the space. So we should be talking about that at some point.
We will. And the 10% of the retail of the space is the 3,140. So 10% of that was in the 5 years ago and 10 years ago is what we were required to maintain for a retail frontage along Colorado Street. Second item of clarification, it's real minor. In terms of the staff report, it kind of bounces back and forth to saying we're in a C1 zone and a C2 zone, and then it says we're in a C1 zone and a C3 zone. We're actually in a C1 zone and a C3 zone. It's actually the zoning is the east side is C1, the west side is C3. The building itself is split as well, and the land is split in terms of the zoning. The original building was built in the 40s, and obviously the zoning was changed in the 80s. I wanted to give you, I know there's some letters of opposition, and I want to address that as well. But I do want to give you some letters of support. And I have 22 letters. And what I've done with these letters in support is I listed them, and if you go to the second page, they are keyed. And the reason that I keyed them is I wanted you to see that there are the businesses and residences around the bakery site. So we didn't go 2 blocks or 3 blocks away and try to get a letter or two. This is actually the people that are every day working with the Chromatic Bakery or adjacent to them. And these are all letters of support. And I won't read, just to summarize real quickly. It just says the purpose of this letter is to verify that they've had no problems or issues with their Chromatic Bakery. They have been an excellent business neighbor and have never given me any sort of problems or issues in all these years. They have always respected us as a neighbor and kept their business activities to a minimum. I have no concerns with the Chromatic Bakery continuing to do business that they has for the past 5 years. I want to make sure that that gets made part of the record as well. I was also given a copy of a portion of, I guess it was a letter in opposition. And what I'll do is after the speakers, when it's my chance to come back to rebuttal, I'll address that at that time. I think that's probably the most appropriate time. I wouldn't mind if I could take a few minutes to go over the findings, because the findings are very similar to the findings that were made to grant 5 years ago and 10 years ago, but I still think it needs to be discussed, and we still need to talk about them. The first item, the strict application of the provisions of the ordinance would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. The subject property is approximately 9,000 square feet. There's about 90 feet of frontage along Colorado Street. It's on the north side of the street. The building was built in 1946. I mentioned it was 5,179 square feet, partially in the C3 zone, partially in the C1 zone. Very unique circumstance, very different circumstance that you don't typically see. Over the past 10 years, the bakery, including the wholesale portion of it, has built up and established a strong client base. As concluded in the previous variances granted due to the split zoning of the property, the type of uses that could be located at the building would be limited. The conclusions were that the complementary nature of retail and wholesale bakery would have a synergistic effect on the surrounding businesses, and this has proven to be true. The code intends to promote reasonable development and use of the property and to deny the request would unduly restrict the flexibility for the building to be used. Many of these comments were taken directly back from the original approvals which the city granted. The second item, there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved. or to the intended use or development of the property that do not apply generally to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. It's very obvious and apparent as it relates to the split zoning of the property and of the building. Once again, this is a renewal of a previously approved variance that justifies the economic investment that the property owners, the business owners have made in this neighborhood. Third, granting the variance will not be materially detrimental to public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such a zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. Once again, the reason that I submitted the letters of support is because I wanted to see and wanted you to understand that these, the Kabadian family, are good, responsible people. They interact with their customers, they interact with other business owners, they interact with the residential around there. They've been there for 20 years, they own the property, and they'll remain there. The granting the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. The mix of land uses, a retail establishment, and wholesale bakery operation continues to create a cohesive and vibrant commercial area. The proposed uses for the building will cater not only to the neighborhood, but also the surrounding community. As stated in the approval 10 years ago, the uses fulfill the objectives of the code to provide for these vibrant commercial areas. The City of Glendale has many policies to encourage the beneficial and productive use of property as established in the municipal code. The continuation of the retail and wholesale bakery are achieving these policies. In conclusion, I think that the Kermanic Bakery is a real asset to our community. It's a family-owned, family-operated small business. In terms of reviewing the suggested conditions as presented by staff, we would agree to comply with them. There was a comment made about the hours of operation. The hours of operation are Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's for the retail portion. And then on Monday and Tuesday evenings, they operate from 6 to 10 p.m. as it relates to the wholesale portion.
What days again, please?
Monday, Tuesday, 6 to 10. And then Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. They operate both portions of the business.
Oh, so it's not just retail Monday through Saturday. It's the wholesale is at the same time as
That
the
is
retail.
correct.
And then additional hours for wholesale.
That's correct.
Understood.
That concludes my presentation. If you have questions now, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll come back for the rebuttal.
You said you will address this complaints that was in the letter later on?
Sure, or I can address them now, however the Commission wishes.
I think it'd be more appropriate for them to get read into the record as far as the public comments, and then between that and the letters we've received that we'll reference, then we can deal with it in rebuttal, if that's all right. My only comment, and it telegraphs deliberations, is I'm not sure that any of us have a problem with the findings that have been made repeatedly, but the conversation will probably revolve around the conditions, which I don't think surprises you at all.
That's correct.
Anything else from the Commission at this time? Seeing nothing, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, you had two cards that are part of your team.
That's correct.
Did they want to speak now?
Sure.
All right, because you're still within your 15.
My name is Harry Sahagian, and dear members of the Planning Commission, thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you tonight. I am here on behalf of Kermanic Bakery in order to ask you to please renew the existing variance for additional 5 years. Kermanic Bakery is a company that exemplifies the American dream. To truly appreciate the story and success of this business, one needs to look no further than the family sitting behind me. A family with humble beginnings that immigrated to this country with a dream of building a business in the trade that the family knew for over half a century, the baking business. This family owned and operated a bakery and has been a proud and contributing member of the City of Glendale for the past 21 years. It was the bakery's it was the first bakery to be established as a true Armenian bakery in the City of Glendale. It was the original one, and subsequently, as you know now, there are many more. In keeping with its family-owned tradition, both sons of the founders have worked tirelessly alongside their parents in order to make life for subsequent generations a little easier than the one they had. With this great dedication and hard work, they were fortunate to achieve success. With this success came the temptation to grow, to move into a bigger place and further cultivate the business, as was the case with most other successful bakeries in Glendale. However, the family resisted that temptation and chose to operate in a humble manner. They were fortunate to be able to pay off the land and occupy and focus on providing exceptional quality products with unparalleled service. Until this very day, that has been the bakery's business plan. Stay small, stay manageable, and continue to do business as they have since 1987. They have consistently remained cognizant of their neighbors and fellow business owners. In keeping with the guidelines set forth by this board 5 years ago, employee levels have been kept to 10, including the family members. Shipping and delivering has been kept to a minimum in order not to disturb other businesses or tenants. Thus, this business has a positive working relationship with the majority of its neighbors and businesses. This is evidenced by the number of signed affidavits by not only adjacent business owners, but the tenants in the apartment building directly behind the bakery. This bakery is here to stay for the long term, and such that having a productive and positive working relationship with the fellow business owners and the community is paramount above all. However, as they say, you can't win or you can't please everybody all the time. And in this case, directly to the west of the bakery is another property owner, Mr. Pavone. Mr. Pavone has had objections from the beginning. He attended our last hearing and objected to the bakery's conditions at that time. Though we are not sure what Mr. Pavone's true motivation is, his persistence raises some questions to us. The bakery, on the other hand, has demonstrated a goodwill to its neighbors and withheld objections when it had the right to do so, when tenants engaged in truck activity other than our business past business hours. The bakery has been many times subjected to frivolous complaints with the city, which we believe, again, originated with certain landowner just to our west. Though concerned with the resulting hostile environment, the bakery has held steadfast and it will not simply pack and move away. It is worth stressing that despite numerous calls to city representatives regarding trash and traffic issues relating to the bakery, city representatives have each time concluded that no violation has taken place. Ironically, on one occasion, Mr. Che Hill, neighborhood services inspector, came to the bakery on a complaint again that there are too many cars, too much noise, etc., and trash. He found no wrongdoing on the bakery's part and looked over to the other end of the parking lot and said, "Whose property is that over there?" And we said, He goes, is that the other guy's? That's not ours. And walked over there, and it was in distress. There was trash. There was weeds. There was a pallet sitting there. He said, how funny, huh? And he walked away. Well, after that, we got 2 more complaints. This time, Mr. Ernest Jimenez Jr., Neighborhood Services Field Representative, showed up. And he said, I got a complaint that there's parking and traffic and trash issues. And he walked around and said, there's nothing here. I don't know what these guys are doing. And he said, everything looks fine to me. He leaves. Javier Garcia shows up. Another complaint as early as yesterday. He says, I don't see anything wrong here. I don't see anything's going on. Sounds like somebody is fishing. They left it at that. As far as the apartment building, there is an apartment building which the entrance is from Orange Grove. It's not behind the bakery. It's like a kitty corner diagonally across from the bakery. There's been a few issues. I believe those are the tenants that actually objected to this. The issues have been about parking. Okay, they have approached the bakery a number of times and said, you're allocated those spots in the back, which are right directly behind our apartment, and we'd like to use those spots. Well, that's the bakery's spots, and we can't give that up. Well, he said, there's too many cars and not enough stalls in our apartment. We can't do that. Now we're forced to park on this side. Well, they're not for sale. I'm sorry, that is private property. So what resulted, can I pass pictures along, sir?
We'll keep them if you hand them in.
Yes,
all right.
Absolutely.
I'd like people to know that before they something.
The apartment that I'm referring to, and these pictures will show them, It's right there. There's a taxi parked in our stalls over there. And kind of shows the wall, the kind of like little alley that leads down to that. Those spots have been in contest with the apartment owners from the beginning. They said, we'd like to use those spots, and they've gone as far as parking there, and we said, if you guys continue to park here, we're going to call this parking enforcement, and they've come and cited them numerous times. So we're not exactly best friends in that respect. At which point, they resorted to this. And which was direct vandalism, spray painting the curbside, which had the bakeries.
Sir, I'm going to suggest that you focus on your property and not so much what people are, potentially doing. It's just more productive, I think.
I understand, sir.
Just 3 pictures.
As far as the bakery's business goes, Monday and Tuesday is the day as far as the wholesale work goes on. Those are the 2 days that the trucking activity happens. And the apartment building just behind us, which signed an affidavit, they have no problems, noise is not an issue, and those are on Mondays and Tuesdays only. And those are the only 2 days that trucks are loaded and the trucks leave. Other than that, we keep quiet. We've had no other issues with any of our neighbors. I just hope that the issues that were brought up was not a red herring in order to distract us from the true intention of what they really wanted. Do you have any questions, sir?
Questions for the speaker? Not at this time, anyway.
Okay.
And you had one more card in your group, Mr. Khan.
My name is Mia Kabadayan. My husband and I, we own the bakery and the land. We start... should I start again? Or?
Oh, no, we picked it up now. You'll just be a little louder.
My husband and I, we decided to open a bakery. So, my husband was working in Capital Milling Company. And then I asked my son, my older son, if he interested to help me. We do. And then he says yes. My husband is still working there. If we're not success, he could support the family and, medical insurance stuff we have from there. We start that way. And then my younger son, he was going high school. He was 17 years old. After school, he come help us. And then he goes home to do his homework. And then my husband come 3 o'clock from his job. He help us. That's why we start the bakery, little by little, step by step. We work hard. I was very scared. It's not easy. And then this land is opportunity. I was trying to start something for my kids, for my family. We did it little by little, step by step. We work hard. I was very scared. I used to cry at the night what I did wrong. We wasn't rich. We bought few machines and stuff, and then if we don't start, what we gonna do? I was very worried as a mother. And then, thank God, we did find step by step, and we bought the land. We're okay. We didn't bother we are the first Armenian bakery in Glendale. Now we have maybe 300 bakeries. We didn't bother us. We didn't bother them. God gave us bread for everybody. We could share with everybody. We didn't bother our neighbors. We work hard. My husband's 70 years old. He's still working. I'm 67 years old. I'm still working, paying my taxes. I'm retired, but I'm still working, paying my taxes. We came to this country 3-4 years ago. We didn't go to welfare. We didn't go nothing. We work hard. And I'm proud of my kids. Now I have my grandkids. We all living behind that bakery. If you please, let us continue that bakery for my kids and my grandkids. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right. I have several other speaker cards now. Robert Thomas.
Hi, I'm Robert Thomas. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Robert Thomas, and I own a business in that block, and also a real estate business, and also own property. I'm a property owner and adjacent to them, and also I property manage the property. I have no problem with them. I've been there since 1984 before they came, and they came around 1987, and they're just good people, great for the neighborhood. And no complaints. The property, I manage about 15 commercial spaces there. And the tenants usually, if there's a problem, they tell me, because I try to solve it. And never have I ever had any complaints with the tenants with regard to the bakery. And they're just good people. Let's see, what else? They've helped me out, because I've had some vandalism in one of my buildings on the corner of one of the stores, and what it was is that people were climbing on the roof. And I said, can you help me out? And with regard to making your place safe so that they don't climb on your property and go on mine. And they helped me out, no problem. And we were able to secure my property because of that. And also there was a tree that was growing up just about a couple months ago that was undermining a fence, and the tree was on their property. And I told them, hey, it's going to undermine my fence. It's real close to it. And can you get rid of it? And no problem, being neighborly. So I have absolutely no problem with them being there. They're good business. They're good for the neighborhood. And that's it. That's all I can say.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions? No. No questions, thank you. Next speaker card is Mr. I believe it's Mazbanian. It might be Nazbanian. Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Garbis Mazbanian. I'm the longest person in that corner, 1354. It's been 22 years I'm living there. And last 10 years, it was noisy. I'm going to wake up as they wish in the morning. I'm going to sleep as they wish in the evening. The buckets, they throwing in the trucks. Maybe I heard Mr. Hahn, he told you that they do 1,000 square feet for retails. I never seen retails they doing in last 5-6 years. Maybe not even 5 customers or 6 customers a day. They do wholesale, and they wholesale is for a Costco. When you sell it for a Costco, you're gonna be working day and night. And I'm happy they are growing business. They are from our community and the bakery, but don't let them make the money from our back. Let us sleep well, and in the daytime we cannot get a nap. It's impossible. It is impossible. We have a petition too. If you check our petition, it's right exactly on Orange Grove. It's not from the Colorado side. I didn't get anything from Colorado side. Our petition is the homeowners or the tenant who's going to sleep day and night. Trucks coming, loading, and they are loading in the midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, like I said. We're going to sleep like as they wish, and we're going to wake up as they wish. I mean, you cannot handle it. We are not living in third world. We are living in Glendale. I've been living in, suddenly it has been changed in last 10 years. Why? Let them go someplace else. Let them make their money. They're going to make a retail, let them do the retail. I'm not against it. Let them open 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. Let them go through 9 o'clock. I'm glad with that every day. I don't say anything, but not through 1 o'clock, not 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. You cannot handle it. And if I sit in my apartment, I'm going to watch the view. I don't have a view. At least I'm going to watch something. I see the trucks, big trucks, with the refrigerator. I don't have a blocking my view, whatever it is. From the side, the alley, which is from the Orange Grove, his workers, they park over there. I was in overseas. I came Thursday. Friday, Saturday, I asked, it's a revolution, what's going on? Clean, no trucks, nothing. But who cleaned that parking lot? This gentleman. In 10 years, I never saw they did anything in that parking lot. They just gave a problem, noise, and that's it. Let them open, like I said. I'm not against the business. Everybody going to make it. I have a business too. But I don't bother people. Check my petition, you're going to see it's all, and there is something I heard today I will not going to say. In future, maybe I can tell it. In 1356, they collect petition. It wasn't right. I spoke with everybody. I will not going to say anything about it. Thank you. Any questions?
I just have a question for
Yes.
you, sir. You were talking about noise at various hours.
Yes.
And various days.
Yes.
Just to clarify, when are you hearing this noise? At what time of day or night? Or
11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning sometimes.
Okay. And throughout the week?
Through whole week.
All right.
Through whole week. Not Monday, not Tuesday, through whole week. Maybe Sunday it's a slow. Maybe it's a slow Sunday. Only Sunday. And they don't have 10 workers. They have more than 10.
Thank you.
They have maybe, okay.
Thank you very much. The next speaker card is Susie Abajian.
Good evening. My name is Susie Abajian, and I would like to speak on behalf of my parents who live in 1350 East Orange Grove. So I actually want to bring up some things that they have mentioned. My parents are retired educators. My father has worked in Glendale High School for many years. He just retired at the age of 81. And they live directly behind the parking lot. Their living room windows, as well as their kitchen window and bedroom windows, face the parking lot and face the trucks that are parked right in front of them. And the trucks run throughout different hours, and they sometimes are turned on so you can smell the exhaust. Whenever I visit, we have to close all the windows because it's really unbearable to sit in the living room and have the windows open. So those are some of the issues. And also, I'm sure you've received this letter that has been signed by some of the residents in the area. So it states a lot of the issues that my parents have with this as well. The bakery was fine when it was just a small business, but as it has grown, it has become a problem. It's become, mainly a wholesale bakery, and that's become a problem because of the trucks. There are lots of trucks parked there all the time. My parents can't really sleep at night because of the noise from the workers and the trucks, etc. And also just the smells, the pollution, and also since the trucks are really large, it creates this kind of barrier where kids hang out on the other side and they can hide, and there has been a lot of problems with that as well. And actually, administrators from the high school have come and the police has come and given truancy tickets to students that have been just gathering there and spending time, and it just kind of all the trucks create this kind of a barrier where they can just hide and do all kinds of things. So that's become a problem as well. In terms of Yeah, the hours of operation, they said that their hours of operation is a certain time. Well, there's a difference between what they say and the reality of that. And that's just been really difficult for my parents. It was mentioned that the residents of this building, need parking spaces. My parents have one car. They have 2 parking spaces underneath their building. That's not an issue. I don't know whose cars were displayed there. It's just ridiculous. I think it's totally ridiculous. So I think that area is just zoned for, it's a residential area, and it's just really an unpleasant environment to live in at this point. And also it kind of affects the property values too. I mean, if my parents were to sell their house, it would be really hard to sell just because of all the activities and everything. So it's really difficult. And my mother, could she come up and speak?
She has a card, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead, Mom.
Okay.
Here, why don't you speak?
Okay. 2 trucks are parked for years as storage room for this bakery. They don't move. And I was surprised why this don't go and come. And all of a sudden they use it as storage room, put things and take out, put things. And the kids come hide between them. They come, teenagers from school, just next to it, they hide there in the corner next to the trucks. And from 8 in the morning till 3 o'clock, they pass the whole day. They ditch the school. At 3 o'clock, they walk away. We solved a kind of that problem because we are retired now, at home, always everything in my front, everything I see in front, what's happening there. And it is very sad. They drink, they smoke, suspicious activities. I can't say everything. I saw a lot of bad things happening there because of these 2 trucks always there. And then, every night, I can't sleep. I have to get up at 5 to go to school. I work as a teacher. I have to get at 5. 1, 2, I'm awake. I went to the doctor. I said, give me sleeping pills. I started taking sleeping pills so that I can have a sleep to go to work next day. This big refrigerator's truck, I wish you had one at your next window next to you, and all day long at night, hear this strong shaking sound. We close the windows still, we hear that. And once I counted 5 trucks there, beside these 2 parking forever. And this forever moved on Friday. A tow truck came and took away. Now there is nothing if you come and inspect it. We had really hard time living there. And it is all we have, that house, and now we are retired. We cannot rest in our house, in our home, day and night, from these hard-working refrigerator trucks.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm
sorry.
sorry.
When you refer to trucks, are you talking about these trailers unhitched?
Yeah,
And
big delivery trucks with refrigerator on top.
And so it's just a kind of like cargo space. It doesn't. It's unhitched from the truck.
No,
The trailer?
about the truck, about the driver's place, there's a big refrigerator, working, day and night.
So there's a engine, the car attached to the
just
trailer.
leaving the car on.
Which they have to do to run the refrigerator.
Well, you can still run the refrigerator when it's a trailer.
And this is going for years.
But
Yeah, it's gotten worse. It didn't used to be like this, a while ago. So it's gotten worse and worse progressively.
No consideration for, and we asked the neighborhood. We have many signatures. They are hearing that too. But our homes, we and the neighbor, we're just facing, it's happening in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And here are also 2 extra letters
Additional? We'll start there. Okay.
You don't have to have pictures of those trucks.
Well, we don't have, a paid professional to come and present my parents' case, so we didn't do all of that.
Mr. Torgerson?
Are these trucks with a tractor, what they call a tractor in the front, and then a big trailer that's maybe 40 feet long, like you see on the highway and the slow
They're pretty
lanes?
large. I haven't really,
They're like two-piece.
Are they two-piece, Mom? The trucks? One piece?
Big refrigerator on the driver's.
Okay, so
They're
more
pretty
like
large. I mean, they
24-footer.
Larger ones.
I see.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last speaker card I have is Jerome Pavone. I'm not sure if he's silent or not.
How do you guys do? Commissioner, board, my name's Jerome Pavone, owner of the property adjacent to the property that is applying presently for application for the variance. Please excuse me for my preparedness, as I do not know the procedures for such an action, but I'll do my best. I did get the copy of the planning department, and I noted in the very beginning there was the bakery, and they were doing retail business, and for many years there has been no problem with those folks at all. I have no ill will or malice towards any one of them. I find them to be pleasant individuals. I know Harry, I've spoken to him, and I know Joe, and I find them both presentable and pleasant. The unfortunality is that as it has moved forward, our family has owned this property since 1953, and we are also immigrants from Italy. My grandfather came to this state many, many moons ago. I'm second generation here after my father. It went from my grandfather, who bought it in 1953, to my father, and now going to me. The concerns that are lied before me come from my tenants on a continual basis. And then I, as the owner of the property, am the mouthpiece. My tenants cite cases of not having opportunities to park for their clientele that come and visit their businesses. Per our arrangement with deed, there are 3 owners that are joined at the hip because of the way the deed was set up. That per parcel, each owner had a 1/3 ownership in the back area of the business. If you'd like to see this, you might have a copy of it up on the board. But from here, if I could just note this out, we own parcels 5 and 6 and have rights in 7, 5, and 23 with access and entrance and egress, and then parking areas over here on the side. The bakery encompasses parcel 4, and the parcels that are joined is parcel 4, 5, 6, and 7. All I've ever wanted was to be fair. All I expect is to be afforded the same opportunities and as any other individual. As my opportunities and or rights have been trodden on, it brought me to where I am here today. My brother at one point filed an appeal. The appeal was denied. I'm not sure if they stood before this meeting. I wasn't part of that equation, but I am here today to cite several issues that I sent a letter in to contest.
And just to let you know, we do have a copy of that letter.
You do have a copy? The zoning administration as to weeds, graffiti, pallets, and products, every time I pull into that property, I police that area up. As a owner, I take pride in that building. I worked it with my grandfather, I've worked it with my father, and I will soon work it with myself and my nephews and my nieces as they get older. It has been in the family and will remain in the family for many years to come. I took issue with the fact that there was only supposed to be 2 trucks, and at any given time, there was more than 2 trucks on that property. I have many pictures to cite, and if you take note on some of these, this goes back to 04, 05, 07, and as recent as last month. With regards to what kinds of activities are going on that property, we have engine replacement, transmission replacement. I've got pictures of that being taken place. As for the trucks that are parked there per this lady's comments, I've got pictures of those trucks that were stacked there for usage of storage, and then when you needed something, they go out to the truck and pull it out there. Those two trucks were continually parked in spaces that I should have had available for my clients, my customers, and such. And I'm a little confused when I read this that it says at the bottom, no complaints, no other problems. I've put in complaints. I've filed complaints. I've called in with regards to violations as to the verbiage in the variance, as to number of ovens available to. They have exceeded that. As to the number of trucks that are available, they have exceeded that on numerous occasions. On a couple of occasions, I counted more than 10 cars back there. I can only assume, and I know what they say about assuming, but I can only assume that they're exceeded on many occasions the number of employees. I'd like to give this, I'm quite aware that this isn't going to come back. Here we go. Thank you.
And you should conclude your remarks, sir.
Am I done?
Yes.
Pretty close? Okay. In conclusion, I would like the council's consideration to not further this variance. Again, I'm not upset with them to the degree of who they are as persons. I am just not willing to move forward with this because it creates an unbelievable hardship for my clients who don't want to come up here and stand before you because they work and live right next door, and they want to at least maintain some semblance of goodwill between the people. But as an owner of the building, I have to present it. I have to come forward and make voice on it. And that's about it. Do you guys have any questions?
Mr. Torgerson?
You mentioned that there were 3 owners, so that the joint ownership of that parking area and the area in the back that there
Yes,
are
sir.
complaints about trash and graffiti and everything, that's jointly owned by 3 owners.
Right. In our deed, it stipulates that per parcel, there is a 1/3 ownership per parcel.
So there's 1/3 responsibility for cleaning up that area. It's
Correct.
not all on the bakery.
It's not all on the bakery. No, it isn't. And I do my fair share. I do know that the grocery store at the very end, who is also another owner, cleans some of their produce out there, has their trash bin at that end of the building. They police it to their area, and it constantly is rotating as they do a lot of produce in that area. I've never had a problem with trash. I've never had a problem with graffiti, and if there is graffiti on the building, my tenants move actively to remove it. I do, unfortunately, have a problem with my ability to get in and out of my building when I want to. No more than a month ago, I parked my car right directly behind my building and locked up the parking lot because there was 4 cars parked in the first 2 stalls, 2 other trucks, and all the other trucks down on the other side. And I didn't mean to lock it up. I just pulled in, parked, and I was going into the Thai restaurant to have a bite to eat and say, "Hi, hey, I'm here. Is there anything going on?" And I'm looking around, and it is complete chaos. And for me, that's unacceptable. I feel for her pain. I don't know, what price do we put on business versus sanity? I think everybody should be afforded a level playing field. I think we all deserve the same rights under God as anybody else. I want to do
Mr.
good business.
Pavone, you've had your remarks.
I'm sorry.
And I understand it's an emotional situation, but if we ask a question, try just to answer the question.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Keep it to a simple response.
I appreciate that. Any other questions at this time for the speaker? Okay, I don't have any, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I don't have any other cards, but for the record, we did receive several letters, a couple of them from speakers that we've heard from this afternoon, as well as several other individuals. The letters basically talk about the trucks, the noise from the refrigerators, the hours that they're hearing it, and bakery workers making noise. So with that, I'm going to allow Mr. Khan a period for rebuttal.
Thank you. Once again, Rodney Khan. There was a comment made by Commissioner Lee as to were there any photographs that can show the trucks. And actually, I do have some additional photographs that I'd like to pass to the board. I know that you're going to keep them. And I have one for each of you. Thank you. I have some additional photographs as well, but I want to make sure I address each of the issues. The reason that I pass these out, if you notice these very large trucks, they have refrigeration units on them, and they're parked in the back area. None of these trucks are Kermanek Bakery trucks. None of them. The issue we have here is you have 4 businesses that have large trucks that make deliveries. But this is the opportunity to put on the Kermanek Bakery to say, this is all your problem. These are all your issues. And in reality, they are not. There was a comment made as it relates to a petition. Our petition was submitted. They submitted a petition, but theirs is residential. Our petition also includes residential as well, along the back street. As it relates to the retail business, the retail business portion of the bakery is required to have 10% of the floor area for retail. It does that. It has always had that. In terms of the operation, how many customers they get, it varies. Sometimes they don't get many at all, and sometimes they do. As it relates to kids that come and drink and smoke and some of the other comments, I'm trying to focus my comments as it relates to this commission as opposed to anything else. But if you look at your staff report, and in particular on page 3, at the very bottom, the last sentence of the analysis of this request, it very specifically states, no comments or concerns were expressed by the city's police department or by neighborhood services section. Now I want to think about that for a second. Neighborhood services has been called out to this property on this business several times, at least 3 times in the last month or 2. They leave every time, having done research, gone through the property, gone through the back, and they have no concerns. If this bakery was conducting a business in such a manner, I think they would have some concerns. They don't. They've come out, we have names, we have dates, and the city has records that there are no issues as it's related to what's being said. The problem you have is you have a number of businesses that are sharing a parking area. And when you go out there, there are different businesses that are doing different activities.
And one of them is a market.
And one of them is a market. A lot of this, or some of this, as it relates to the way that the parking is being conducted, whether it's the residential or whether it's other commercial businesses, is there's private disputes between property owners. And that's not something for this commission to kind of delve into. Ownership of the parking spaces in the back, the lots themselves being challenged, different things like that. That's completely separate from what this body is looking at here today. I know, but that's what's taking place. I'll conclude my remarks. I do have some additional photographs that I could show you for other trucks that it relates to being on the property. There were 2 trucks that were parked by Kermanek on the site. Those trucks had sat there. They were removed. So any of the concerns that were expressed previously, there were 2 trucks that had just sat and sat, they were removed. So any of the trucks that are sitting there now are not Kermatic bakery trucks. The Kermatic bakery trucks are very clearly labeled.
Let me challenge you on that point right now.
Sure.
The trucks were removed. That's great. But of course, there's a hearing that's about to occur. Obviously, your client and everyone is going to want to have their best foot forward. The issue is those trucks were there, and they sat there, and the applicant, the applicant wasn't such a good neighbor to leave those trucks there for so long. So my concern as we step forward is, how do you stop that from happening again, Mr. Khan?
Well, I think it's really a few things. You're right. It was a concern, and it was something that we talked about that needed to be addressed, so they addressed it. How do we prevent it from happening again? I think we have the owners here that hear very clearly that these types of activities are not acceptable. That's one thing. The second thing is that, once again, if we're focusing on the truck traffic issue, they can handle and control their trucks, as it was in that issue in which they did. Many of these other comments or concerns are not their trucks. So whether it's loading late at night or whether it's other truck activity, they can only be responsible for what they're responsible for. And they clearly hear you, and that's why they acted.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Lee.
Yeah, some of these speakers came up and talked about late-hour operation, trucks, coming and going at odd hours. I mean, I guess wee hours of 4 a.m., 3 a.m., 1 a.m. That is a very severe accusation and is something that, is very detrimental to the lifestyle of those people who live around there. What's your explanation on that?
Well, I guess, Commissioner Lee, I'd look at it and say, were those Kermatic bakery trucks? Because different trucks come in there for different deliveries for the different businesses. I've asked my clients those specific questions that you're asking me, and they're saying, no, we don't do business at 1 a.m. We don't do business at 5 a.m. And that's what they've told us.
So in your previous statement, even though that was not part of your condition here, but you have stated your hours of operation Monday and Tuesday and the rest of the day.
I clearly stated that, yes.
And those are your keeping strict hours for that?
I asked my clients what their hours of operation is, what they can live with, the way they operate their business, and when we come here today, they're going to need to live with those conditions. And they said, yes, those are our hours.
Also, those are the hours that you are putting forth as a condition, or that's the hours that you are operating now?
That's the hours they told me they are operating, and those are the ones we're putting forth.
I see.
It's the same.
How many baking ovens does your client have?
2.
Still just 2, all right. What other, Mr. Torgerson?
Go ahead.
Would you happen to know what other businesses are open at 2 in the morning and 4 in the morning to have refrigerator trucks idling and unloading and what have you?
I couldn't even guess. I don't know if it's the market. I don't know what that would be.
Mr. Sheets.
Just one point of clarification on the additional trucks and hours of business. I know some businesses, their hours of business are when customers come and go, when the employees are there, and then there's deliveries that occur after those hours. Is it your statement now that the hours of business are when the trucks are there for delivery? After that, there are no deliveries, or do you know?
The way that it was explained to me is that the hours that I gave you, there are not deliveries that are made at 2 in the morning or 4 in the morning, either coming or going.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? I believe not, Mr. Khan. Have you completed your rebuttal?
Yes, I have.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Closing remarks from staff?
Just, I guess, a reiteration and a suggestion that the commission may want to consider adding some hours of operation to, depending on which way the commission decides to go. If the commission decides to go forward with it, they may want to add some hours of operation that would regulate, what's possible for this business to go to?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Lee?
Yeah. Not just, pertaining to this bakery here. Obviously, I guess trucks are going in and out of that area in the really late hours and the early mornings, whether that's a produced truck, whatever the truck that's coming in, they are saying that it's not their truck, but it's somebody's truck that's going in and out in that area. So is there some sort of a provision? I mean, I know we're only talking to the bakery people, but in that, the common area there, to put some sort of restriction there, there's no trucks allowed in this hours operation from, let's say, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or, 7 a.m. And that applies to everybody in the back, so that they can have a piece of a quiet, while they're sleeping. Is that allowed?
There are city codes that would already address that, but whether we can be more restrictive, unfortunately, we're stuck with an individual property and not a series of properties. Mr. Garcia, did you hear where the question started?
No, I didn't. I apologize. We were talking about one of the other issues.
It was really important. Please restate it, Mr. Lee. I'm trying to get you to blush, Mr. Garcia.
The question was that when I directed the question to Mr. Khan, Mr. Khan said that was not his client's trucks. Obviously, there are some other trucks that's going in and out of the area, of the common area there, of the different properties, the different businesses there. Can we, I mean, I guess the interest here is to stop the trucks going in and out of their area in the 1 o'clock or after 10 p.m., 4 o'clock in the morning and so on. So even though this only pertains to bakery, can we somehow put conditions, to the rest of the property owners there so that there's no trucks allowed in the area at all?
No, you couldn't do that. You can only impose a condition that they're that they can actually have control over.
That
Again,
is private property, isn't it?
Well, of course, I think one of the problems is that at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning and whatever, and all these trucks are making noise, you can't call neighborhood services, so they wouldn't have any complaints, and so naturally there wouldn't be any negative complaints from neighborhood services. And whether or not you call the police, and whether or not the police might say, hey, we're busy taking care of the bars closing down at 2 o'clock in the morning. We haven't got time to come over and see if there's a truck idling next to your apartment. So what does the neighborhood do about something like that in your estimation?
You're right. No, neighborhood services wouldn't be out there, but I think if there was either a legitimate complaint or evidence of trucks out there when they're not supposed to be through pictures or other testimonial evidence, then that's something that the police could look at and then report that to neighborhood services for follow-up.
So a resident could get for instance, a video camera, take video of these trucks idling at 2 o'clock in the morning and turn that tape over to the police?
They would turn it over to neighborhood services, and then neighborhood services would usually they'll make the determination whether it's a legitimate, credible complaint, and then take action from there, either to try to get some additional evidence indicating that there's a violation.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I know it's tough to resist. Anything else from staff at this time?
That's it.
All right. I'm going to close public hearing. We'll enter deliberations. Who would like to start off? Mr. Torgerson.
Yeah, most of the complaints have to do with a common area behind a series of properties that are in joint ownership, and it's not clear. We've got photographs of bakery trucks, which have since been removed. We've got photographs of J&J Meat Company and a produce truck that are clearly not bakery trucks. So it's, in my estimation, there's a problem for the residents. It involves 3 properties, and it's something that neighborhood services and the police department are going to have to deal with in terms of enforcing municipal codes that say you're not supposed to be making all this noise in the middle of the night. We can't put it all on the bakery. On the other hand, I wouldn't see any problem with, just to make sure, putting down reasonable conditions on this variance, that the bakery will not operate any deliveries or pickups or cleaning or pot banging or noise before the hours of 9 a.m. and after the hours of 10 p.m., in keeping with their stated hours of operation. And other than that, the rest of the conditions, there's already conditions in there about the number of trucks and it seems like it's a long-standing and useful, productive business, and something we want to encourage in Glendale, but not at the expense of the neighbors behind the business. We're always going to have this problem at the interface between commercial and residential. And to the extent that we can put conditions on this, I'd approve the variance.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Torgerson. Mr. Lee.
I'm kind of thinking along the same line. My comment earlier was that my thought was that obviously, we can put all these conditions that the bakery can adhere to, and my assumption is, I guess, other businesses are like market that's there. I guess they will not be triggered to come before us if they're allowed to be there. And my thought is that the other ones are probably the delivery trucks will make it. Is delivering some of the produces and some of the meat early in the morning. That's my just assumption. So I don't know how we'll be able to control that in order to alleviate some of the problems or the sleepless nights that the residents are facing. But as far as the case before us, there wasn't really clear evidence that all these trucks were the bakery trucks. I mean, I can see that in the common area that you have all these other businesses, the deliveries are going in and out. So, I'm inclined to approve, with the hours operation conditions, and then that hope that we can at least regulate one business.
Mr. Sheets.
Yeah, I tend to think along the same line. I have a bit of concern about the two trucks that were stationary for an extended period of time. To me, that wasn't a good faith effort relative to customer complaints. Obviously, there have been some complaints, whether they were about bakery issues or trucks or not. It's really difficult in all the pictures to tell whether they're bakery vehicles or not. There were a lot of unmarked vehicles. Obviously, there's a problem, but it's not just a bakery problem. So from that standpoint, it's difficult for me to put all of that with one broad brush on the bakery. I would keep in mind and be careful that there are no other, for lack of a better description, stationary trucks around the business, and make a good faith effort to make sure that the parking spaces used are appropriate. And in wanting to agree with the use variance, I agree with the changes, adding the times, as stated by Commissioner Torgerson, times relative to the noise when it starts and when it has to stop. And I guess with the difficulty of looking at the pictures and telling whether there were two vehicles or not, it's pretty specific about the number of ovens and the number of vehicles. I would just make mention that we use these findings, these conditions, and adhere to them very carefully and very closely, and if there and make sure there are no other items that can be related directly to the bakery. If there are other, we should just follow these conditions very carefully. But I guess it's just very difficult for me to find any fault, or find all fault with the bakery. It's difficult to know who is to blame, and that's another issue. So I would tend to approve this use variance.
Okay, well, as is always the case, the truth lies somewhere between two extremes. We've gotten photos from the applicant showing the meat trucks and produce trucks and so on. We have a lot of photos from some of the speakers that are showing a pattern of lack of upkeep. And I'm afraid that's what's happening. And by the way, I consider the applicant to be very honorable. They've worked hard. They're making a success. No one begrudges them that. I think it's wonderful to see that your bakery is such a success. But you're on the cusp of being a victim of your own success. I mean, there's a reason that wholesale bakeries aren't generally allowed in that area. That's because of the intensification of use. The trucks that are coming, a wholesale bakery, your stuff's got to get out early in the morning or late at night to be in the stores for the next morning, as I would perceive a typical statement. I may be wrong, but that would be my presumption, that those things, it's like a newspaper. It needs to be on your doorstep first thing in the morning to be fresh. And the problem, so what happens is a wholesale use like that doesn't fit in as well as retail use and doesn't fit in well with a neighborhood. So that's why the more successful you are on the wholesale thing, the more you can, inadvertently burden the neighborhood. Now, I see and I understand that a lot of that parking issue isn't solely the bakeries. But there are plenty of photos in here that showed those trucks that sat there for some time, that showed repairs being made, that we're getting testimony that people are making noise and trucks are coming. And I realize a lot of them aren't necessarily your trucks, but those people are still showing up too early and just idling their engines. I know what delivery trucks are like, the flour that's coming or whatever, and they're idling their engines, just waiting for somebody to show up in the morning so that they can offload, and they're just going to make noise and idle their trucks and keep them running. So where I'm going with that is I think in the efforts to maintain your business, you've let a few things slide, and you've got a little sloppy in managing what should be good neighbor things. I mean, again, I'm sure you guys get frustrated when the produce and the meat trucks are blocking your access to get to your stuff and having your deliveries made. I know it goes both ways. But to have those trailers out there and have them, disappear, frankly, because you're about to have a hearing, and to have you on your best behavior for the last week or two while this hearing's coming, that should be something that you need to redouble, that you need to rededicate yourself to. I mean, you take pride in your business, and I'm sure you take pride in even the alley. But by running your business, you've lost sight of a few things, and you've lost, again, I'm going to just say you've gotten a little sloppy. And as a result of that, you're impacting your neighbors. It's not all your fault, but you are contributing to it. And that has to improve. And we're talking about hours of operation and conditions and all the rest. And fundamentally, we can't legislate that whole alley. We've said that. We can try to impose some things to help you become, redouble yourself as good neighbors, but you're still going to have a problem with all the other people that are out there. And you as neighbors or as affected property owners, what you need to do is you need to document much as what we've already seen, and you need to not get fatigued in calling neighborhood services. I mean, the city's a bureaucracy, and it takes time, and it takes effort, and I know you may be sitting there going, oh, well, we've already tried. You just need to keep it up. You just need to document the times. You all need to do it if you've got problems out there. But you also need to realize, you guys are all saying, oh, the bakery. There are other people at fault. They may have a lion's share of it, they may not. But there's other people involved, so we can't just cast a wide broom and solve all the problems out there. My attitude is, frankly, that I think we need to look at conditioning the hours of operation. There's all the other things that we could put in as conditions are really already kind of mandated by the city code. I mean, cleaning stuff outside and stacking and all the rest. It's really becoming, to me, an enforcement question with limited resources in the city. What I'd actually like to suggest is I'd like to suggest that we continue this for 6 months. That they're allowed to operate, and we just see if they've been able to redouble their efforts as a good neighbor, if the neighbors are able to get to neighborhood services and try to work through whatever else is going on, maybe these problems get abated. And maybe even if we delay it 6 months and then we approve it and maybe old habits begin again, well, at least we tried for 6 months to see if things were going to change. As it is right now, I respect the business. I'm glad they're a success, but I am seeing impact, and I'm seeing things that shouldn't be happening. And the fact that you're only cleaning it up because we have a hearing makes me uncomfortable with just going, sure, have another 5 years or 10 years or whatever. So I'm reluctant to approve it just out of hand. I'd like to see a pattern of behavior for a number of months.
Mr. Chair.
And I'm sorry I was so wordy.
Just comment on that is that even if we approved, let's say, use variance, I think, if it turns out that we put conditions on there and they are not really being good stewards of that conditions, and, they, in their diligence, let's say, discover, 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning, the trucks are coming, and that, after we put the conditions on there, that it turns out to be bakeries' trucks, and then, we can bring them back here and then revoke their use variance. So.
You're absolutely right. The difference, though, is it goes from us being able to have, let's say, a little leverage and control and a heightened awareness of what's going on to something that becomes enforcement. And, we're already seeing problems all the time with neighborhood services and at least the perception of how responsive they can be. There's only so many people working so many hours doing so many things. Mm-hmm. So I agree that we could pass this and then leave it up to enforcement, but that's the only reason I'm thinking, yeah, we could do that. And maybe that's what the vote will be. But that's one of the reasons I said let's delay it for a period of time to just see if we're getting a true pattern of behavior improvement.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think I have to pipe in here a little bit. Because the use variance has expired or is expiring, it's not something that we could just continue and then let them operate. It'd be an issue. I think that if the intent is to basically have a chance to look at it again in a short period of time, just approve it, but with a shorter period of approval. So instead of the 5 years, the 6 months, or I think that the director's thinking maybe a year will give the staff an adequate time to make a judgment call on what's going on out there.
And then bring them back.
Then bring them back.
That's a possibility. There's an expense associated with the bakery, but it's also their burden to improve behavior, or at least help work on the perception of behavior. And again, it's not all the bakery. We're hearing that you're affected by your neighbors as well. That's a possibility. I wouldn't want to go short of 6 months. There's just no time to react to any of that. This expires in January.
Yeah.
Well, let me just ask, can we, in practical terms, there's two ways of doing it. We could approve it for a year or some other term, depending what commissioners think, or can we allow it to expire and simply hold enforcement for 6 months?
It is expired.
Huh?
It expired last January.
It has. Oh, it's already been expired.
It's expired.
Okay. I was thinking it was this January coming up. I understand.
Well, for the fairness of the...
What's everyone thinking?
For the fairness of the people that, the applicant was applying, if they are applying for this use variance again after, let's say, 1 year period, do they have to go through the whole process again and the fee structure and all that?
It's a new case.
Okay, so then is it possible to build something in, because we are putting this on that fee be waived for the second app? No?
Okay. It's a new case.
Nice try.
I just want to be fair.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's unfortunate that there's a cost associated with it, but... Mr. Sheets, what do you think?
Mr. Chair.
Oh, Mr. Hagani.
I hear you clearly about the costs associated with approving it for a shorter period of time and bringing it back. But I do think that we would need at least a good year before we can see that over time how the applicant would perform, because it's much easier if there is really any proof that they've cleaned up their act for just the hearing, then it's much easier to keep your act clean for 6 months. I think a year would give us a better chance. And if the concern for an application fee is something you would like to consider, perhaps 2 years, then it's in 2 years they'd have to pay a full fee with for the hearing and come back, and that would still give us a good chance of keeping them under. Keep our eyes on them and have neighborhood services keep their eyes on them and see how they perform over time.
I personally have limited sensitivity to the financial aspect of it. It's more of a quality of life, but I'm willing to hear it. What, excluding obviously consultant fees, which we wouldn't be privy to, what's the city costs now?
I believe it's about $3,000. Remember correctly?
$3,000 for a use variance?
Yes. Plus hearing notices and obviously the production of plans and materials.
Approximately.
So it's fairly pricey. Mr. Sheets?
I see what your intent is, and I agree with it. I think the year sounds better for stated reasons. It allows the business to just continue for a good period of time. And I think just based on that, I think it's necessary to do something like that, and the costs will be what they'll be. I don't want to try to force that upon a business, but it's important enough for them to continue. They've been for 20-plus years. So
I guess I would just observe if the original one ended in January and we're only hearing it now in November.
That's another question.
It's kind of a de facto year plus kind of thing, isn't it? By the time of calendars.
Stipulation then. I mean, we're just getting it now. So.
I'm sorry, Mr. Torkelson?
I was just making noises of slight disagreement.
Harumps?
Harumps.
Well, what are your thoughts?
2 years.
Just 2 years.
2 years, add the conditions we discussed. I have some wording. That would be what I would be inclined to do.
You have my support on that.
I'm still a little reluctant, because I think the 1 year is a de facto almost 2 years.
It's possible that that's true, but in order to have enough time for the limited staff, the small staff neighborhood services and the planning department to collect enough information and make sure the enforcement's working, 1 year might be. It's like it might be a little. It might be easy to keep yourself out of trouble for a year, but if you go 2 years and you got to stay out of trouble, then some of the things that you did in that first year become habit.
Part of your culture.
Part of the culture. Part of the. It gives the business more time to adjust to the, instead of just the temporary.
Got to be good this week.
Yeah, kind of they can kind of evolve into a more long-term methodology that would be more amenable to the neighborhood.
And the only reason that I'm hesitating on it is simply that I would hate to, for lack of a better phrase, sentence the neighborhood to 2 years of discomfort, of unacceptable behavior.
But that's only if we're assuming that they're the ones that was causing all these problems, but we don't know that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
No, I agree.
Right. So we still have problems to solve in the corridor.
That's true. Mr. Hagani?
Yes, and I must add that from the time, if you limit them to any number of months, for example, we would ask you to consider that. But from the time the applicant submits the application with the fees, it'll take a good 4 months for us to bring it to you. So then if you're going to say 6 months, a year, or a year and a half, or 2 years, whatever you want to say, you might want to keep in mind that if you're talking about a year, we're really talking about 7 or 8 months before the applicant is required to submit an application form. If you say 2 years, we're really talking about a year and maybe 6 to 7 months before they are required to submit an application, because the process itself takes a good 4 months.
They need to be in front of you sooner
That's right.
To be there at the threshold.
They need to submit the application.
Why is this 10 months?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Why is this 10